A very good morning to you. It is 6 o'clock. It's Wednesday, the 5th of January. This is Breakfast on GB News on your TV and now on your radio. That's right, you can find us on DAB+. If you're watching us before work or before the school run, don't forget, when you leave the house, you can take us with you. Coming up this morning, around 6 hospital trusts have declared critical incidents due to staffing shortages. But the Prime Minister says the country can ride out the surge in COVID cases without new restrictions. Do you agree? Prince Andrew's fate hangs in the balance after a US judge says he'll decide soon whether a sex assault case against the Duke of York can be thrown out. Plus, heavenly homes. With so many churches closing down across the UK, we're asking you, would you live in an abandoned church? Join the conversation this morning. Email us, as always, at gbviews@gbnews.uk or tweet us at GBNews. We want to hear from you. Thanks for joining us. Our top story this morning. Prime Minister Boris Johnson wants 100,000 critical workers to take daily tests in the hope that England can ride out the Omicron wave without more restrictions. Here's what he had to say.
Anyone who thinks our battle with COVID is over, I'm afraid, is profoundly wrong. This is a moment for the utmost caution. Together with the Plan B measures that we introduced before Christmas, we have a chance to ride out this Omicron wave without shutting down our country once again. We can keep our schools and our businesses open, and we can find a way to live with this virus.
So that was the Prime Minister yesterday evening at one of his now infamous press conferences. Let's cross to our national reporter, Paul Hawkins, who joins us from Downing Street this morning. Good to see you, Paul. There you are. Look, is this a bit of a gamble from Boris Johnson as cases are surging to just ride it out, as he says?
Yeah, he doesn't really have a choice, to be honest. Very good morning to you, Isabel. Yeah, he doesn't really have a choice at the moment because, according to most experts, even if he were to try and impose Plan C measures anyway, it'd be pretty pointless now. The window for those Plan C measures to have any sort of effect has passed, really. And what we're looking at now is the key bit of data that they're looking out for is over 60s, really. In London, which is a canary for the rest of the UK, rates of COVID are now falling amongst the 20 and 30-year-olds, but in over 60s, it is still rising. And so they're going to wait to see whether that rise in cases amongst the over 60s translates into hospitalisations and potentially also, of course, because of their age, because of their vulnerability, also into ICU admissions. And that's the key bit about this wave at the moment. It is that whereas with previous waves we were looking at a link between rising COVID infection rates, hospitalisations, ICU admissions and deaths, that chain of that link has now been broken, and really hospitals are seeing large numbers, but in general wards with COVID and not in ICU units. That still has an impact on how the NHS fares, of course, and the NHS struggling as well with a staffing shortage. But yeah, this wave very much different to the previous ones because Omicron, of course, a much milder variant but far more transmissible.
I'm sure feeding into all of this, Paul, is a sort of political backdrop that for the Prime Minister it would be very difficult for him to do anything other than ride it out. To even extend the Plan B measures, it will be difficult given the views of his own party. And he's having a tough time in the polls, isn't he? Labour have been doing well for a long time, but now Lord Hayward has come out with some damaging polls predictions for the elections in May.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, he's a very sharp pollster. Really has a reputation for telling government, telling prime ministers, telling Conservative Party headquarters how it is. He successfully predicted the 1992 general election results, also the 2015 general election that was won by David Cameron, and then, quite crucially, the Brexit referendum, which a lot of polls got wrong, but Lord Hayward got it right. He's done an analysis of all the London boroughs which are up for election in May, and he says that normally very strong Tory-held councils like Westminster, Wandsworth, potentially also Barnet, could go the other way and fall to Labour based on the current polling. And he says the Prime Minister should be very concerned. Now, we saw in the Red Wall seats up in the north of England, there's a 16-point lead up there for Labour at the moment. So with those results, and with those potential London results in May, if that is the way they were to pan out, then there would be more pressure on the Prime Minister, even further, potentially even a leadership challenge, which a lot of people have been talking about.
Yeah, very interesting. You talk about the Red Wall there and the constituencies in the north of England that have been traditionally Labour. Labour Party really trying to capitalise now on the gains in the polls that they've been enjoying for a few months now. Sir Keir Starmer yesterday doing a keynote speech, trying to contrast his leadership style with Boris Johnson, describing his approach as a straight leadership. How much of a blow would that be to Boris Johnson, do you think?
I mean, it could potentially be a significant blow to Keir Starmer there. He was talking about security and prosperity, talking in general themes, not too much in the way of detail and policy there. And I think it's fair to say opinions divided at the moment on whether whether the general British public, whether they're turning away from Boris Johnson and the Conservative Party because of how they're performing, as opposed to being attracted to the Labour Party. So, yeah, it's a difficult time for Boris Johnson. He will hope that now that Christmas has passed, and at the moment the attention is focused on COVID, that's where the government feels it potentially is stronger, and away from the allegations about Christmas parties. It'll hope that it can now move on into the new year. We have a white paper on levelling up, what that means, and how the government indeed intends to level up the country. There's a white paper due on that later in the month.
Good stuff, Paul. Lovely to see you. See you again. OK, let's bring you up to date now with the rest of the morning's news. And the US judge in the sexual abuse case against Prince Andrew says he'll have a decision very soon on whether or not he'll dismiss the case. The Duke of York's lawyers argue he's covered by a 2009 deal struck between his accuser, Virginia Giuffre, and the convicted sex offender, Jeffrey Epstein. She claims the prince sexually assaulted her when she was 17. Prince Andrew denies all the allegations. At least 6 hospital trusts have declared critical incidents amid staff shortages due to COVID, with hospitals in Greater Manchester pausing some non-urgent surgeries. The Prime Minister has acknowledged parts of the NHS may feel overwhelmed in the coming days. Yesterday saw more than 218,000 confirmed cases in England and Scotland, the highest number since the pandemic began. Tony Blair's former Defence Secretary Geoff Hoon says he was ordered by Number 10 to burn a secret memo that said the invasion of Iraq could be illegal. When the claim first came out in 2015, Blair said it was nonsense, but Mr Hoon has revealed details of the cover-up to the Daily Mail. Over 600,000 people have now signed a petition demanding the former Labour Prime Minister be stripped of his knighthood. North Korea has launched an unidentified projectile into the sea. The Japanese Coast Guard, which first reported the launch, said it could be a ballistic missile, but has not provided further details. The UN prohibits North Korea from ballistic and nuclear weapons tests. OK, time now to take a look at your Wednesday morning front pages of the newspapers. Let's start with the Daily Telegraph. It's talking about changes to the testing rules. They're being relaxed in order to cope with the ongoing staffing shortages, reducing that need, getting rid of that need for a PCR test. Here's the Daily Mirror reporting that ambulance chiefs are asking people with heart pain to make their own way to hospital in order to cope with less drivers. The Times front page looks at the Prime Minister's comments that we can get through the newest COVID wave without new curbs. The Guardian's headline takes the opposing view, stating Johnson admits the NHS could be overwhelmed in the coming weeks. The Daily Mail reports that the former Defence Secretary to Tony Blair burned that secret memo we were talking about in the headlines just a moment ago, a memo that stated the Iraq war could be illegal. The Independent's headline says hospitals are worried about their ability to care for patients due to rising COVID cases. The Eye looks at key workers needing daily tests in order to limit the spread of the Omicron variant in key sectors. The Daily Express goes back to Boris Johnson's comments that the UK can find a way to ride out the rest of the pandemic. The Sun also discussing the Prime Minister's riding of that wave comments. They note that the large numbers isolating are still damaging schools. Well, as we've been discussing this morning, a number of hospitals across the UK have now declared critical incidents as hospitalisations continue to rise. Boris Johnson, however, insists no new measures are needed, despite hospitals pleading with exhausted staff to keep normal services open. Well, let's get more on this from our GB News reporter, Amelia Harper. Very good morning to you, Amelia. Look, first of all, just explain what a critical incident means and what this means, crucially, for the standard of care and for patients.
Well, essentially, a critical incident is where health bosses are concerned that they cannot continue to provide priority services such as cancer care for their patients. And currently, up to 6 hospital trusts are believed to have declared a critical incident. And that totals around 11 hospitals, actually, across the country. And this is all because the NHS is facing significant pressure due to the new Omicron COVID variant. The UK has now hit another record daily high in terms of recorded COVID cases at over 200,000. But what is this doing in hospitals? Well, 15,000 people were in hospital as of yesterday morning with coronavirus. We heard that from that press briefing yesterday. That's up 58% from the last week. Boris Johnson at that press conference last night said that up to 90% of people in intensive care had not had their booster vaccine, and 61% of those people in intensive care were actually unvaccinated. It is worth noting, though, that they said at that press conference that Omicron is now known as a milder variant and the mortality rate hasn't increased. But what is this doing with staff shortages? Well, 10% of NHS staff are absent at the moment with coronavirus. Several of these hospital trusts across the country have declared that critical incident, and by declaring a critical incident, it means that they can ask for more help and have more staff deployed to different areas of the country so that they can continue to maintain vital services. Those trusts include University Hospital, Plymouth NHS Trust. Their Derriford Hospital actually had nearly 500 staff absent due to coronavirus. Great Western Hospital, NHS Health Trust in Wiltshire, also United Lincolnshire's Hospital NHS Trust, the Morecambe Bay NHS Trust in the North West, and also Blackpool Teaching Hospitals NHS Foundation Trust. Now, Boris Johnson says we will be facing increasing pressure, or the NHS will be facing increasing pressure in the coming weeks. Here where I am in Milton Keynes at the University Hospital Foundation Trust here, their CEO Joe Harrison has said that they haven't had to declare a critical incident yet. However, he said that COVID patients have doubled in the last week. Staff sickness is on the rise, and he says we are preparing for this to get worse.
OK, Amelia, thank you very much indeed. Stay with us here on Breakfast. Coming up after the break, Prince Andrew's lawyers have asked a US judge to throw out the sexual abuse lawsuit against him. Is that likely to happen? I'll have the latest after your weather.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Good morning. A pretty cold one out there this morning, even colder tomorrow morning. Generally, though, today, most of us will see quite a bit of blue sky and the winds easing down compared to yesterday. Now, low pressure is pulling away to the east. There is this weather front that's weakening further west, and we're kind of between the two weather systems. So, as I said, for many it's dry and fine, but the winds are still coming down from the north and still pretty brisk across the northeast. Could be icy here through the morning as the showers keep on feeding down. Those showers chiefly of rain at low levels, but some snow over the hills, and a wintry mix in the showers too for Wales. But also here, the showers should fade through the day, and any across the southwest will be few and far between. For most of us, it's a fine, bright winter's day, and those winds continue to ease down. Temperatures, well, still on the chilly sides, but generally not feeling quite as cold as yesterday because of those lighter winds. However, light winds and clear skies this evening will allow a frost to form, and form pretty quickly. Temperatures really going to drop overnight tonight. A widespread frost forming. Temperatures likely to get down to -1, -2, even in towns and cities. Rural spots -5, -6. So a really cold start to Thursday. Further west, though, cloud is moving in. That will lift the temperatures and bring some rain to Northern Ireland. A bit of snow is possible over the hills here, but as the wet weather hits the colder air across North Wales, northern England and Scotland, there will be more snow here over some of the higher routes. Shouldn't last too long, but it might make for some pretty grim travelling conditions for a time during the course of Thursday. Further south, it'll be mostly rain as temperatures eventually get up close to double figures. But for most elsewhere, it'll still feel pretty cold on Thursday, even though temporarily we have this milder air moving in. That shunts out of the way, cold air returns, and things could be icy with some snow showers in the northwest on Friday morning. Bye for now.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Hello there, I'm Eamonn.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamonn Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamonn.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News. Very warm welcome back to Breakfast on GB News. The time's just gone 6:17. We're live on your TV and your radio this morning. Now, a US judge will soon decide whether or not a civil sexual assault lawsuit against Prince Andrew will be dismissed. Lawyers for the Prince said the Duke could be covered by a 2009 deal that his accuser, Virginia Giuffre, made with the convicted paedophile Jeffrey Epstein. Prince Andrew denies all the allegations. Well, let's talk now to Kinsey Schofield. They're a royal and showbiz reporter who joins us from the United States. A very good morning to you. Look, the judge heard and closed things yesterday and has said that a decision is expected very soon, but we're not clear when that might be. But in the meantime, just give us a sense of where it looks as though this is heading, because here in the UK, the Prince's team were briefing very much that they thought this case would see his case in the autumn being thrown out. But from some of the language we heard being used in court yesterday, including this phrase from the judge, that is not a dog that's going to hunt here. It doesn't look as though it's going to go in the Prince's favour, does it?
Very good points. And I just wanted to say very quickly, congratulations on the new show. I love the look and you're absolutely stellar. I'm enjoying and spending my mornings with you all the way here in Los Angeles. But yeah, the judge seems to be on Virginia's side with some of the language that we're hearing. The alleged victim agreed to release Epstein and other potential defendants from liability in the 2009 settlement. However, the judge says he mentioned a clause in that settlement that bars any other person from using the deal in any other case, which obviously he's hinting at Prince Andrew, saying perhaps, he's unable to utilize this particular settlement to, this is not going to be his get out of jail free card, loosely. But he also, he said he is going to give us his judgment very soon, but he did not want to give us a timeline because it was too much pressure on him. He kind of joked it was it was 70 minutes, a virtual hearing. And I think that people are very nervous about this actually continuing and going to trial because of what could come out. Some of this testimony could be very damaging to the royal family and not flattering in any way, shape, or form for Prince Andrew.
Yeah, and look, we should absolutely, in his defence, state that all throughout this he has maintained his innocence and he hasn't been before a court himself, so we should make that clear. That being said, the way it's being reported here is almost trial by media. There's a lot of people saying he's trying to get out of allegations of sexual assault on a legal technicality rather than proving his innocence. Wouldn't it be better if this all just went to trial in the autumn? He could come up with the evidence required, for example, that he doesn't have this ability to sweat, or the receipts from Pizza Express in Woking where he was alleged to have been at the time that Virginia said that these assaults were taking place. Would that not be better? Oh, we've lost Kinsey. What a shame. She was joining us from LA. We'll try and re-establish that line if we can, because our plans were to talk to her about the Duchess of Cornwall also turning 75. And, of course, don't forget the Duchess of Cambridge turning 40 this week. We've got her. Kinsey, you're putting me on the edge there. I believe we've got you back. Oh, welcome back. There you go. Technology. What can you do? Look, we were just getting into the details of this trial with Prince Andrew, and lots of people saying, wouldn't it just be better for him if he came out and went on trial, civil prosecution, but in the autumn?
I would say, while I understand that argument, Prince Andrew has some of the best attorneys in this country, and they are doing their job. And while it seems maybe a little unfair or a little gross to pursue, almost to jump on this, well, you were paid $500,000, I'm just going to go ahead and say that my hands are clean because it's been taken care of. While that does not seem maybe like the best or the most honorable thing to do, his attorneys are some of the best in the country, and they are going to do everything in their power to make this go away for him. So you have to applaud his attorneys for doing their jobs at the end of the day. And PR-wise, it would be in their best interest to not have to pursue this. We don't want to hear some of the details. The palace doesn't want some of these alleged details released or whatever this story is. And so I would say that his lawyers are just doing their absolute best. And while we might not agree with the strategy, it very well could work for him.
Look, Kinsey, twin track to this ongoing case is, of course, the sentencing expected soon of Ghislaine Maxwell. Lots of speculation about whether or not she'll be, what we say, singing like a canary, giving some other names to try and reduce her sentence. And as you alluded to in your first answer, there are lots of other people's names that have been associated with the sort of filth of the Epstein and Maxwell sort of circle of sex trafficking. How much concern, or is there, do you think, from some of those elites in the States and indeed around the world?
I would say I am grossly surprised by how uninterested the country is in the Ghislaine Maxwell trial. I was surprised at the lack of American press that followed the trial. It was kind of an afterthought. Of course, this all happened around the holiday season and so much gets buried, but you're not seeing the Clintons hide in hiding. You're not seeing some of these huge people that were associated with this pedophile. You're not seeing them trying to defend themselves. It's as if it's not really going on. And I will say also in regards to that, her family says that there is no way that she is going to name names. They are confident that she is going to keep her mouth shut. She was so defiant throughout her trial and in her innocence that she didn't even, there was no defense for her. She just decided to sit back and see what happened because she did not believe that the prosecution truly proved their case. And that is how delusional she was throughout the process. But I don't think that anyone in the States is really concerned about her naming names. And to be quite honest, the mainstream media here did not cover it in the way that you would expect with some of those huge political figures attached to this man.
Let me tell you, Kinsey, as is so often the case, the press here in the UK have really been focused on this with a laser eye, and quite often the rest of the world follows our very, very good excoriating press, and I'm sure that will be a big story. Look, let's lighten the mood. It's only 6:30 in the morning here in the UK. We've got some royal birthdays this week. Camilla turning 75, and her daughter-in-law, or stepdaughter-in-law, the Duchess of Cambridge, Kate, turning 40 at the weekend.
Isn't it amazing? And Camilla looks very good for 75, and she is. I know. And she is celebrating by being the guest editor of Country Life magazine in July. Tom Parker Bowles, her son, he has a column for the magazine. He said he's delighted that his mom is going to participate. We're going to get to hear more about horses and dogs, which, Queen Elizabeth, they have that in common. So I'm sure Queen Elizabeth is going to love flipping through the pages of that magazine. But this is something new from Camilla. I don't think we necessarily get this kind of access to her. So I'm particularly excited to see what she does in Country Life magazine. And then you want to talk about aging well. Kate Middleton, that is goals. She is one of the most beautiful women in the entire world. I cannot believe she's going to be 40, especially because we've seen her grow up right in front of our eyes. So a lot to look forward to. It's like you said, while there is some of this negativity happening, there are some bright lights within the royal family, and that specifically is Will and Kate, and I'm excited to see this from Camilla.
Yeah, and you know what? Both of them may end up being queen as well, Camilla and Kate, at some point, depending on how those titles are bestowed. But they, as you're so right, they're both defying age somehow. I don't know what their secret is. Kinsey Schofield, lovely to talk to you this morning. Thank you for your warm words about the new show as well. We wish you all the best.
Yeah, I think that...
Oh, we cut her off there. Look, stay with us here on Breakfast. We're all remembering, of course, now the tragic killing of the Conservative MP David Amess last year. And before him, Labour's Jo Cox. But years before that, the Labour MP, Stephen Timms, was also stabbed in a constituency surgery. He luckily survived. He's been giving an interview to our presenter, Gloria De Piero, as part of her Real Me series, which you can catch on The Briefing today at around 12:35 p.m. Let's just see a little preview.
After it happened, after she was sentenced, I said to the police I would like to meet her then to find out a bit more about what was going on. She was my constituent. I had met her. She'd come to Parliament with a school class previously, apparently. I mean, I don't recall the occasion, but she had. She'd grown up in my constituency and spent her life there. And I would have liked to have met her then. The police at the time said they didn't think that was a good idea, so I didn't pursue it. But now that the opportunity perhaps has arisen again, I'd welcome that.
That's Stephen Timms speaking to Gloria De Piero in her show The Real Me. That's at 12:35 p.m. this afternoon on GB News. Well, coming up, Eamonn will be here in just a moment and we'll be discussing that latest daily testing mandate for essential workers, as set out by the Prime Minister last night. Will you be affected? Find out after this.
Hello there, I'm Eamonn.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamonn Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamonn.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
Hello there, viewers and listeners. Good morning. It is Wednesday, the 5th of January. This is Breakfast on GB News on your TV and now on your radio.
That's right. You can find us on DAB+. If you're watching us before work or before the school run, don't forget, when you leave the house, take us with you.
What a thought.
What a thought.
If you're already listening, drop us a message, GB News, GB Views, or tweet us at GB News. Coming up this morning.
Around 6 hospital trusts have declared critical incidents due to staffing shortages, but the Prime Minister says the country can ride out the surge in COVID cases without new restrictions. Do you agree?
Searching for love in high and low places. Wait until you hear how a bachelor is getting creative in his search for romance.
Heavenly homes. With so many churches closing down across the UK, we're asking you, would you live in an abandoned church?
No, I would not.
Well, I think the phrase abandoned church makes it sound like a sort of spooky, derelict old abbey or something.
Derelict.
But, you know, a funky flat in a, modern converted church in
in a place where
central
people have
London.
been led to rest, where you have funerals.
Well, their bodies are,
it's also
not buried in a church.
Well,
they get deconsecrated. I don't know. I don't know. I quite like the idea.
Seriously?
Well, I love a stained glass window. You can't go wrong.
I can see the idea that it's. I think it's sacrilegious that they become nightclubs and things.
Yeah, I know.
I can see them turned into offices, but it depends if you're religious or not, or you believe in the supernatural.
Well, both of us have been sort of brought up with sort of knowledge of church and
that's why
religion.
You should live in one.
No, well, okay, I won't live in one, but I do love a cemetery. If it came with a cemetery, I could be swayed.
So night out with Isabel, hey?
No, but you go for a walk with the dog, it's peaceful, you get wildlife in the middle of the city centre. I think cemeteries are really peaceful.
See, I like the idea of a cemetery, though. I'm not big into cremation.
I don't want to talk about my own death. I'm not sure about that.
I want you weeping and wailing and dressed in black, not like that.
Yeah, I will, don't worry.
Yeah, dressed in
with
black
a full
and
veil Spanish lace,
doing that sort of thing, and lots of incense and hymns. And do you know what I want as my song when I go down the aisle?
Oh, yeah.
And take me out?
It's going to be a sentimental Irish song, I just know it.
No, it's not.
Oh, what is it?
It's going to be from Elvis Presley.
Oh, of course.
And it's going
Blue suede shoes? Oh, no, you've not worn those today.
Would you let me speak?
Sorry.
Bridge over troubled water.
Really?
Yeah.
Why?
When you're lonely,
oh, here we go.
Feeling low, I could sing all of this, but we've got to get on to the news. But your views actually coming in already. Would you live in a converted church? Right, okay. Jen Beer says, I would if it had a graveyard like you.
There you go.
They're the best kind of neighbours.
Oh, I'm not sure about that.
No. She obviously hasn't watched enough horror films. You're The Walking Dead and Dracula has risen from the grave and all those sort of things. No.
Enola says, if not converted into flats or homes, why not reuse them for youth clubs or community centres?
Yes, indeed.
The venue could also be used or rented for events, and office space could be rented out cheaply to local or independent service providers for mental health or drug rehab or something like that.
Church is about community.
Yeah.
It's about community.
Yeah.
And I think we'll take this theme and we'll run with this today. And we should talk to people about
why they're being closed. It's not just about people not being religious anymore. I think with COVID restrictions, obviously you're not allowed to gamble.
Yeah, or you still are at the moment. My parents still go to church every week, but there was a long period when they weren't allowed to go and there was no singing, and I'm all for the singing.
Yeah, and you know, the funeral business, the idea that you can't have more than, 4 people or something
Terrible.
there is, well, I would break the law on that.
Yeah.
I'd go to jail. I'd say send me to jail.
Oh, there's a talking point.
My mother's dead and you expect me not to have 30, 40, 50, 60 people there. Well, no, I wouldn't do it.
There you go. Would you break the law if your loved one died and there were restrictions in place? Or, in fact, have you lived through that? Let us know your thoughts on that this morning. So much to talk about.
Well, the Prime Minister wants 100,000 critical workers to take daily tests in the hope that England can ride out the Omicron wave without more restrictions. Now, here's what he had to say.
Anyone who thinks our battle with COVID is over, I'm afraid, is profoundly wrong. This is a moment for the utmost caution. Together with the Plan B measures that we introduced before Christmas, we have a chance to ride out this Omicron wave without shutting down our country once again. We can keep our schools and our businesses open, and we can find a way to live with this virus.
Well, let's bring in our national reporter, Paul Hawkins, who joins us from Downing Street this morning. Look, Paul, is the Prime Minister doing this because he thinks that, this disease or this variant is really mild, even though cases are going through the roof, the highest ever? Or in reality, is he doing this because politically he can't really do anything else?
I'd take option B on that front, personally, but there you go.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, morning, Eamonn, morning, Isabel. Yeah, that's exactly right, really. It's a bit of both, to be honest. He'll be very pleased because, according to studies from people like Warwick University, the window for introducing Plan C measures has passed anyway, so there will be little point in imposing those measures. Omicron is so widespread now that there isn't much that the Prime Minister could do. And in any case, if he were to try to impose Plan C measures, as you say, he faced a huge rebellion when he imposed Plan B measures. He had to rely on the Labour Party then. He wouldn't want to do that again now. So he'll be pleased, both for the country's economy and politically, that he doesn't have to go to Plan C. Really, what we're worried about now is the rise in infection rates in the over 60s, which in London still rising pretty rapidly. In the 20s to 30s, the rate of infections is slowing. So still going up, but slowing much more than in the elderly. And we're going to wait for data in about a week or two's time to see whether that rise in infection rates amongst the elderly translates into general hospital admissions and, more crucially, ICU admissions, which at the moment have been relatively flat.
Right, talking about data, Evening Standard in London, they've been trotting out some figures there on the Prime Minister and popularity. What do they say?
Yeah, so these matter, Eamonn, because they're from Lord Hayward. He's a Conservative peer. He correctly predicted the 1992 general election, the 2015 general election, and the Leave vote in 2016, which a lot of polls got wrong. He has a reputation for speaking truth unto power, for telling prime ministers and the Conservative Party headquarters how it is. And he says that under the current polling, Boris Johnson, the Conservative Party, would be facing their worst results in London. But really in the existence, in all the time that the London boroughs have been around, which is about 50 years. At the moment, the Conservatives control 7 of London's 32 boroughs. They could lose as many as 4 of them, which would be their worst result ever. And we're talking about, really, it's not about the numbers of London boroughs that they control. It's more the fact that these London boroughs have been Conservative for so long. Wandsworth, he says, under current polling, could switch to Labour. It's been Conservative since 1978. Also London boroughs like Westminster and possibly Barnet as well. So, yeah, these are, it doesn't make for good reasoning for the Prime Minister.
Paul, thank you very much indeed. Let's bring you up to date now with what's going on today. Nicola Sturgeon is to address the Scottish Parliament on any possible changes to restrictions. The First Minister will speak in Holyrood at 2 p.m. today. Opposition parties have called for the 10-day isolation period to be cut to 7 if someone tests negative twice.
Airline bosses are calling for testing requirements for international travel to be ditched. Research commissioned by airlines group suggests they make little difference in reducing the spread of Omicron. According to the Times newspaper, ministers are considering scrapping the need for pre-departure testing for those arriving into the UK.
The campaign to strip Tony Blair's knighthood has been boosted by a damning confession from his former Defence Secretary. Jeff Huhne has said that he was ordered by Mr Blair to burn a secret memo about the 2003 Iraq invasion that said it could be illegal. A Welshman attempted to destroy a £500,000 Banksy artwork to stop it being taken by an English collector. The work depicting a child playing in ash as if it had snow. It was spread on a garage in Port Talbot in 2018. The vandal said he wanted to destroy the artwork out of protest, as he believed if the people of Port Talbot couldn't have it, no one could. Well, you could argue that Banksy was the vandal in the first place. A lot of us just like graffiti there. So anyway, we're not seeing a Banksy there. We're seeing a bachelor from Birmingham who's hired billboards across the city to help him find a love match and save him from an arranged marriage. Mohammed Malik is looking for a Muslim woman from any ethnicity who can keep up with the Punjabi family's banter and is striving to better her deen, whatever that means. He took to advertising himself on billboards and a website, findmalikawife.com, after finding out real-life dating was tough. Tennis star and 20-time grand champion Novak Djokovic has been granted a vaccination exemption to play in the Australian Open. The organisers say Djokovic was granted the exemption following a rigorous review process. The tournament begins in Melbourne on the 17th of January. Now, John Smith is with me now, who is a sports agent, and basically he joins me now with Martin Dobney to review the newspapers. The Djokovic story is very, very interesting. What about the consequences of that?
If you read the story in the Times, it actually balances quite well, because essentially he said, I'm not going to tell you whether I've been vaccinated or not. So it's a personal choice. Now, technically, he's been reviewed by an independent panel and another panel, and they've both cleared him. So as much as the sentiment is a bit negative towards him, for obvious reasons, and the Australian
he may
states
well have been
locked out,
vaccinated.
He may well have been, or he absolutely has a right to say, I'm sorry, chaps, but I'm not revealing.
Or these tournaments are so dependent, whether it's a golf tournament, tennis tournament, whatever, they're so dependent on big names, they'll bend the rules.
Well, they'll certainly be helpful, shall we say.
What would you think? I mean, if you were representing him or you were organising that tournament, that you'd want him there?
Yes, of course.
Yeah.
It's the first one of the year. It's a big player, and this will only make it bigger.
OK. We're going to get lots more big news, Martin, on Prince Andrew. We're waiting the update on his fate, which may well come today.
Yeah.
What's your take on it?
Well, I've been saying since the start, I just don't think he will ever face a court. I just can't see it. It'll be an absolute nightmare for the royal family, for them to have their dirty laundry aired in this manner. The latest technicality, they're trying to pass off that the witness was paid off by Epstein, $500,000, which prevents her from talking. A bit of a non-disclosure agreement. And Andrew's team are arguing that also includes him. Of course, the prosecution is saying it doesn't. But it's all about, I think, discrediting her as a credible witness who's been bought off. They're doing their job. They're going to try every technical wangle they can to get him off this.
But at the end of the day, you say, I mean, he denies everything along the way.
Yeah.
But they're doing their job. But what about him? Whether he gets off this, as you put it, or not, would you like to be representing him? Would you like to be his agent? Do you think you could get him many bookings after this?
I think, and let's make the point that he is innocent until proven guilty. And this is it's a civil case, so the onus is on the defendant to prove guilt. Whatever happens, I think Andrew's future is murky. I don't think he will not be the prince we all remembered him over the years. No, I think his future is absolutely dark.
Yeah, they're going to try and lock him in a cupboard, I think. They want him to disappear. I mean, there's enough problems with the royal family. They will want him to simply vanish from public life, I think, irrespective of the outcome. I think it's curtains for him.
Yeah, OK. What about Tony Blair, then, and this leaked memo from Jeff Huhne about how the Iraq invasion was probably illegal?
God, if I was the parent of a child who died or a recipient of negativity from all the carnage that spilt out of that Iraq invasion, I would be so angry now.
Yeah.
Look, I know it's a a format. It happens. Prime ministers become knights, and so on and so on. And speakers are supposed to go up to the Lords. It may be time to change all of that, because this just doesn't play for me. I find this bizarre, and the fact that it stops a David Cameron or a Gordon Brown getting a knighthood because there's a logjam behind him, that doesn't play either. I think in the real world, the sentiment is just too negative towards this.
Martin?
Yeah, I mean, this is a new revelation by Jeff Hoon, the former Defence Secretary of Blair at the time. It's an allegation made in 2015 that a memo was ordered to be destroyed which declared the invasion of Iraq to be illegal, which is the central point. This war was illegal, and the petition to have his knighthood stripped of him has now reached, I think, 700,000 signatures. This will only add fuel to that fire. The whole point was there's a feeling this honour has been bestowed upon him when he doesn't deserve it. He took Britain into a legal war, killed 1 million civilians and hundreds of British servicemen. And this, I think, will add further pressure to re-examine and maybe even withdraw the knighthood, which has gone down terribly with the public. Blair seems to be one of those people that politicians like and the public can't understand why. And he just gets away with it.
There's with him, though, as well, isn't it? Because he has done so well from an entrepreneurial point of view.
Yeah, that is true. But the knighthood was bestowed upon him for political services. And that, I think, sheds a whole fresh light on it. And this has to go, I think, now to some sort of inquiry. If this is true, and the war was illegal, and Blair ordered the memo to be destroyed, I think the evidence is damning. It's terrible news for him.
OK. Boris Johnson and the press conference last night, which he gave. I'd like to ask you both how you felt that he did in terms of performance and in terms of what more we know.
I think damned if he did and damned if he didn't. Actually, as far as Boris's reputation is concerned, the whole Partygate thing has sullied that currently. I know Martin and I were kicking it around. I know Martin's going to talk about it in a minute, about how that has tainted the whole judgment process. As far as I'm concerned, I think he's done the right thing here. I think if you look back at pandemics over history, they have a 2 or 3 year optimum window. We're coming to the end of it. He's right to let us go back to life. It's not a Nicola Sturgeon type society that we want to live in down here. I don't think. I think we want to get on with our lives. We've protected ourselves well, and I think it was the right call for him.
Well, by allowing Christmas again, it's a political decision. And you've got the consequences. You've got these NHS trusts now declaring emergencies. And you've got trains that aren't running. You've got schools that aren't functioning because people have COVID and they have to isolate.
Yeah, but they're being screened and tested at a record amount. And for a variant which, by any reckoning, is nowhere near as serious as previous ones, 42 deaths with, not even of, Omicron since the start. That's 5 times less than road traffic accidents. And will we seriously want to ban all cars? Well, don't rule it out. They probably want to ban all cars too. But I think Boris has plunged us into another state of calamity, knowing that this was a variant that wasn't anywhere near as deadly as previous ones because of Partygate, because of the scandal over them breaking their own rules, which they never obeyed since the beginning. They flouted them. They're having sex with the people's wives. They're having garden parties. They were never, ever following their own rules. And now they're saying, oh, only we can save you. Boris sells us the illusion that he is the only saviour from the nightmare of COVID, when actually reopening society and getting on with it is what we need to do now. And I think Boris had a terrible pandemic, but having said that, Starmer's been worse. They want harder, sooner, longer lockdowns. We've had no leadership, really.
But it's not an illusion, Martin, that trusts are saying, we can't take patients in here, we can't do anything outside Omicron, we can't deliver ambulances to your doors, take a taxi if you want treated in a hospital. That's not an illusion.
No, but that's because they are screening record amounts of people who are testing positive for a virus which is less deadly than the flu.
So what would your answer be to that?
I would say look at the numbers, that the actual deaths with are so low. This is something we have to just learn to live with and get on with. Savi Javid says we have to learn to live with this, and yet we can't. We have to close the health service, we have to stop ambulances, we have to close schools because of positive tests that pose no significant risk to health.
So ignore the positive tests?
No, the positive tests are there, but what I'm saying is the actual virus is not sufficiently deadly to close down the society again.
OK, John, what do you think?
I agree with that. I think we're in a position now where people with the virus, most of the people with the virus are currently young people because they've been associating with other people in a wider range of activities over Christmas. I think there's a minor caveat in my head that the virus is attacking older people now, and so I think we've got to be a little cautious over the next few weeks. But I think we're on the pathway back to a real living again, and I think it's really I think Boris has done well. I think it's a good call, and I think the hospitals can cope, providing people are sensible. They don't. A lot of the effects of COVID are cold similar. Yeah. So in other words, you're going to feel a little bit unwell. Don't call your hospital. Just look after yourself and stay isolated.
OK. Now, if you're a bit down, if you're middle-aged, there we are, we'll include the three of us in this. You may think of when you talk about those people over 60 are at risk, and you suddenly go, that's us.
Me.
That's us. You may think of skateboarding as a pursuit exclusive to teenagers in baggy clothes, but middle-aged skateboarders are getting serious about the sport too.
Yeah, this is the report from Exeter University of 30 skateboarders of a certain age, probably my age, and they are sort of extolling the positive virtues of skateboarding, reinvigorating their youth, giving them hope to live, and they're saying here they were grown men fighting back tears when they were skateboarding. Now, I know about this because I fought back tears when I took up skateboarding with my son because I kept falling off.
You seriously took it up with your son?
Yeah, because my son took it up and I thought, well, I'll get involved. And the skate parks are full of middle-aged men with broken arms and broken bones. Because we all know, Eamonn, you don't bounce when you get old, you break.
You break, absolutely. Wouldn't even think about it. Absolutely agree with you on that. Yeah.
What about, chaps, what about e-scooters? How do we feel about e-scooters? Because that's the next step up from skateboarding.
Yeah, have you tried it?
Yeah, I fell off.
Yeah. Well,
That's your answer.
And I didn't bounce.
I mean, when you were a kid, you were probably OK in a scooter. So what's the difference now? Is it the fact they're powerful?
No, I just think you tend to lose a bit of sense of balance when you get a little bit older.
Yes.
You know, no, it's even worse when you're drunk. But yeah, when you get a little bit older, you tend to lose a bit of sense of balance. And also, you lose a bit of confidence. Because when you're 26, 36, 40, you don't care. But when you're 66, well, I'm a bit older than that, but when you're north of 66 or circa 60-something, you're a very young 60.
No, but listen, I was looking, do you know when you lift up the newspapers and you get to the, there's a section always in the newspapers that deal with health and whatever.
Yes.
Now, big thing, have you ever seen the adverts on mobility scooters?
Yeah.
And they're not just the way you would think. They're not just like a basket and they go at 2 miles an hour. You can get four-wheel versions of them as well.
You can get GTX versions.
Yeah, you can. That's all looking good, and there's a sort of roll bar cage over the top and whatever it is going to look good. So I happened to suggest this to my wife that I think, would this be an idea? But this was dismissed very, very
I want to see you on two wheels, not on four. You're too young for four wheels.
That's all quad bike for OAPs, that sort of thing.
I could be a poster boy
you
for
could.
mobility scooters.
I'd like to see it.
I could be doing that. Guys, thank you very much indeed. Really appreciate it. If you're tuned in on the radio, you were listening to John Smith and Martin Dobney reviewing the newspapers here. And if you're just joining us, this is what's on the front pages this morning. Daily Telegraph looks into testing rules being relaxed in order to cope with the ongoing staffing shortages. And that was something Martin was reflecting in the review. Daily Mirror reports that ambulance chiefs are asking people with heart pain to make their way to hospital by themselves in order to release pressure on ambulances. The Times' front page looks at the Prime Minister's comments that we can get through the newest COVID wave without new curbs. But The Guardian's headline takes the opposing view, stating Johnson admits NHS could be overwhelmed in the coming weeks. The Daily Mail reports that the former Defence Secretary to Tony Blair, Jeff Hoon, burned a secret memo stating the Iraq War could be illegal. The Independent's headline says hospitals are worried about their ability to care for patients due to the rise in COVID cases. The Eye looks at key workers taking daily tests before they go to work in order to limit the spread of Omicron in key sectors. And the Daily Express goes back to Boris Johnson's comments that the UK can find a way to ride out the rest of the pandemic. Here's The Sun. It also discusses the Prime Minister riding the wave, but notes that the large numbers isolating are damaging schools and public transport.
Now, we all remember the tragic killing of the Conservative MP David Amess last year, and before him, Labour's Jo Cox. But years before that, the Labour MP Stephen Timms was also stabbed in a constituency surgery. He luckily survived, and he's been speaking to Gloria De Piero as part of her Real Me series, which you can catch today on The Briefing at around 12:30. Let's see a short clip.
After it happened, after she was sentenced, I said to the police I would like to meet her then to find out a bit more about what was going on. She was my constituent. I had met her. She'd come to Parliament with a school class previously, apparently. I mean, I don't recall the occasion, but she had. She'd grown up in my constituency and spent her life there. And I would have liked to have met her then. The police at the time said they didn't think that was a good idea, so I didn't pursue it. But now that the opportunity perhaps has arisen again, I'd welcome that.
Well, that was Stephen Timms speaking to Gloria De Piero in her segment The Real Me, which will air in full at 12:30 today on GB News. Well, stay with us here on Breakfast with Eamonn and Isabel in the next hour. We'll be talking about churches across the country. Sadly, many of them are now closing down, many being converted into flats. We're asking you, do you live in one, or would you indeed consider it? More after today's weather.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Good morning. A pretty cold one out there this morning, even colder tomorrow morning. Generally, though, today, most of us will see quite a bit of blue sky and the winds easing down compared to yesterday. Now, low pressure is pulling away to the east. There is this weather front that's weakening further west, and we're kind of between the two weather systems. So, as I said, for many it's dry and fine, but the winds are still coming down from the north and still pretty brisk across the northeast. Could be icy here through the morning as the showers keep on feeding down. Those showers chiefly of rain at low levels, but some snow over the hills, and a wintry mix in the showers too for Wales. But also here, the showers should fade through the day, and any across the southwest will be few and far between. For most of us, it's a fine, bright winter's day, and those winds continue to ease down. Temperatures, well, still on the chilly sides, but generally not feeling quite as cold as yesterday because of those lighter winds. However, light winds and clear skies this evening will allow a frost to form, and form pretty quickly. Temperatures really going to drop overnight tonight. A widespread frost forming. Temperatures likely to get down to -1, -2, even in towns and cities. Rural spots -5, -6. So a really cold start to Thursday. Further west, though, cloud is moving in. That will lift the temperatures and bring some rain to Northern Ireland. Bit of snow is possible over the hills here, but as the wet weather hits the colder air across North Wales, Northern England and Scotland, there will be more snow here over some of the higher routes. Shouldn't last too long, but it might make for some pretty grim travelling conditions for a time during the course of Thursday. Further south, it'll be mostly rain as temperatures eventually get up close to double figures. But for most elsewhere, it'll still feel pretty cold on Thursday, even though temporarily we have this milder air moving in. That shunts out of the way, cold air returns, and things could be icy with some snow showers in the northwest on Friday morning. Bye for now.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Hello there, I'm Eamonn.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farrar, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamonn Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamonn
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News. Hello there, good morning. The time is 6:59. It's Wednesday, the 5th of January. This is Breakfast on GB News on your TV and now on your radio.
You can find us on DAB+. If you are watching us before work or before school, then don't forget, when you leave the house, you can take us with you. We are absolutely everywhere. And if you're already listening, drop us a message, gbnews@gbviews, or tweet us @gbnews. Coming up this morning.
Around 6 hospital trusts have declared critical incidents due to staffing shortages, but the Prime Minister says the country can ride out the surge in COVID cases without new restrictions. Do you agree?
We'll bring you the latest headlines from across the country, including a look at today's front pages to bring you right up to date on this Wednesday morning. And we've been talking about heavenly homes.
With so many churches closing down across the UK, we're asking you, would you live in a renovated church? Join that conversation then. Get in touch on email, gbnews@gbviews.uk, or you can tweet us @gbnews.
For the record, I wouldn't. I wouldn't. I think they'd be drafty, they'd be cold, they wouldn't have insulation in the walls, for instance. I mean, I know the renovations are probably quite good, but there's probably somebody watching who's waking up in a church this morning. Goodness knows what spirits you're waking up with, but if you want to get in touch with us, please do.
Yeah, let us know your thoughts. I personally think they'd be lovely. But I do think it is sad that all the churches are closing, and that's a whole other matter.
Yeah.
But got to do something with them if they are being abandoned. What about bins? Did you see all those pictures of piles of rubbish due to the lack of bin collections?
Outside your house, and that funeral pyre of trees that you've got out there as well.
That's true. They're everywhere. In fact, I nearly stopped and took pictures yesterday because we've been talking about them on the show yesterday. People naturally have to put their Christmas trees, disposed of Christmas trees somewhere. They're everywhere. They're blocking the streets. But not only that, now the bin collectors are all having to self-isolate.
But I'm not a real tree fan. I just think it's so wasteful. I don't see the point of it. I mean, a nice artificial tree. I'm a great fan of artificial trees. Lovely colours, built-in lights.
Well, I tell you what, they don't drop, and mine dropped so much this year that I was put off. But, you know, the bins are an issue, aren't they? And we're seeing that staff aren't there. They're having to isolate. I think 1.2 million people in the UK right now are off work, and it means our stinking Christmas rubbish, many people not having had collections all through the Christmas period, aren't getting collected.
There's nothing as bad as a turkey a week after. Maggots.
It's the maggots, isn't it?
You ever seen maggots?
I have, yeah. When I was a reporter in Bristol, there was a bin strike, and it was the peak of summer. And let me tell you, worse.
Maggots.
Yeah, it's worse in the heat.
Maggots, and then they turn into blue bottles. And then you say, what is the point of a blue bottle? What is the point? What does it actually do on God's earth?
I know.
Or a fly?
Besides landing on stuff that's nasty and then come into your kitchen and...
See what a lovely bumblebee does, and it pollinates and whatever. So are these the bad boys, flies in blue bottles? Are they the ones that just eat everything that's decomposing?
I don't know. Let's see. Someone watching, can they make the case for why blue bottles exist? Because we'd be happy to do away with them, wouldn't we?
Be very happy to do away with them. Like wasps. What's the point of a wasp?
Yeah, I hate wasps. Oh, I hate wasps. But I do love a bumblebee. We do go on this show. We want to talk about the issues that matter to you. Have your bins been collected?
Oh, wait a minute. Yeah, no, Rob's from Thurrock, right? Hi, Rob. Morning to you. Thanks for watching. He says, and listening, of course, Rob. You could well be doing that. You could do both. Even the rats have started getting picky about what they take from the bins as they've been left full for so long. Yes, well, you know, it is. But then also, a bin operative. Would you do the job? Would you do that job? They're all very happy. Any I've ever seen, they seem to be very, very happy. But thank goodness for them. They're essential workers, no doubt about it.
Shout out to them, absolutely. So let us know your thoughts this morning. As always, we want to hear from you. On to our top story now. The Prime Minister wants 100,000 critical workers, among them, of course, bin workers, to take daily tests in the hope that England can ride out the Omicron wave without more restrictions. Here's what he said at a press conference yesterday evening.
Anyone who thinks our battle with COVID is over, I'm afraid, is profoundly wrong. This is a moment for the utmost caution. Together with the Plan B measures that we introduced before Christmas, we have a chance to ride out this Omicron wave without shutting down our country once again. We can keep our schools and our businesses open, and we can find a way to live with this virus.
Let's go to our national reporter, Paul Hawkins. Paul's out and about. He's in Westminster this morning. Tell us more, Paul.
Yeah, essentially the Prime Minister is saying that the country is going to try and ride out the Omicron wave, although he does acknowledge that the NHS at the moment, parts of the NHS certainly, are feeling a little bit overwhelmed. It's not so much ICU admissions, which has been the story of COVID up until this Omicron wave. It's more that general hospital admissions and staff shortages are combining to leave some parts of the NHS feeling overwhelmed. So the government is making contingency plans for that. They're also for key workers, so those people who work in food processing, food supply lines, also in transport, border force, etc. Those kinds of people will be given daily lateral flow tests from next Monday. So it's about managing Omicron now. It's about trying to get through it without having to impose Plan C measures, which the Prime Minister says he will not be hopefully moving to when he meets with ministers later today. So Plan B measures in place at the moment until January the 28th. The key bit of data that they're looking out for is the over 60s. In London at the moment, COVID infection rates, Omicron rates rising in the over 60s. For those who are 20 to 30-year-old, the rate of infection amongst that age group is slowing. So we could be nearing the peak in London very soon, but in the over 60s it's rising. Question is, in a week or two's time, will that translate into ICU admissions?
Well, that is the question. And Boris Johnson, of course, the master of positivity. He's made all the headlines today. We can ride this out. But saying so doesn't make it so. What's the data saying?
Well, at the moment, COVID infection rates, if you're talking about COVID infection rates, at the moment in the UK, 1 in 25 people has COVID, but it seems that London is a canary for the rest of the country. So in London, in the 20s to 30s, infection rates at the moment are slowing, but in the over 60s, they could translate into ICU admissions. So that's what the government's looking at the moment. Certainly Boris Johnson will be very pleased not to have to go to Plan C measures, given that he faced a rebellion of 100 of his own MPs when he moved to Plan B and had to rely on support from Labour. And at the moment, looking at the polls, in red seats, in the red seat walls in the north of England, the Conservatives 16 points behind Labour, according to that polling. And according to some polling analysis done by Lord Hayward, the Conservative peer, he says that under the current polling, looking at May, at the local elections in London, the Conservatives could be facing their worst ever election performance. They could lose 4 of their 7 Conservative councils in London. So on current trendings, according to Lord Hayward, who successfully predicted the 1992, the 2015 general elections and also the referendum result, it could be looking very bad for Boris Johnson.
Paul, thank you very much indeed. Let's bring you up to date now with what else has been going on today.
The US judge in the sexual abuse case against Prince Andrew says we'll have a decision very soon on whether or not he'll dismiss the case. The Duke of York's lawyers argue he's covered by a deal between Epstein and Virginia Giuffre. She claims the prince sexually assaulted her when she was 17. Prince Andrew is denying all the allegations.
At least 6 hospital trusts have declared critical incidents amid staff shortages due to COVID within hospitals in Greater Manchester, postponing what they say is non-urgent surgeries. The Prime Minister has acknowledged parts of the NHS may feel overwhelmed. in the coming days. Yesterday saw more than 218,000 confirmed cases in England and Scotland, the highest number since the pandemic began.
Tony Blair's former Defence Secretary Geoff Hoon says he was ordered by Number 10 to burn a secret memo that said the invasion of Iraq could be illegal. When the claim first came out in 2015, Blair said it was nonsense, but Mr Hoon has revealed details now of the cover-up to the Daily Mail. Over 600,000 people are signing a petition demanding the former Labour Prime Minister be stripped of his New Year's honour.
The French President Emmanuel Macron has said that he wants to get on the nerves of unvaccinated people by restricting their freedoms, but the comments have sparked a backlash from his opponents who say the words aren't presidential. France has one of the highest vaccination rates in Europe at more than 90%, but saw more than 270,000 new COVID cases yesterday.
Now, on to another story now. In just a decade, more than 400 churches have closed down in England, with data showing that 940 churches were shut between 1987 and 2019.
Yeah. Now, here to offer us more insight into this is Eddie Tulasevich, who's head of Communications and Public Affairs at the National Churches Trust. Eddie, there must be a certain sadness. I mean, I know these figures, do they alarm you or is it predictable?
I think the problem is that more churches are going to close in the future if we don't look after those buildings properly. I like to think of churches as being like Doctor Who's TARDIS. On the outside, it's a building, but inside, some amazing things happen. They're places of worship. Or you can just drop in for some peace and quiet, like at Candle. They're amazing history and heritage. You just have to go into a historic church to realise, you know, the country's history is in those buildings, the local history. And they're also great community centres, food banks, etc. So,
do you know, Eddie, more than anything, I mean, I know a lot of people, they may be switching off, they think, oh, religion, I'm not into religion. But we're not just talking about religion here. I really agree with you. You know, I'm lucky enough in terms of my job to be out and about and see a lot of things. But the whole sense of community, particularly at this time, is very, very important.
What's been going on in churches over the last 2 years? Vaccination centres. Just down the road from here, Grenfell Tower, the church was the first responder there. Churches bring together with them a huge number of volunteers, and we've calculated that churches contribute about £55 billion of social good to the UK each year. So we think that money should be put into them by the government, by local authorities, by the public to keep those buildings going. So if something goes wrong with a church, you're talking about a very big sum of money. A roof, you want to repair a roof, it's £500,000.
Yeah.
But Eddie Tulasevich, is this then, you think that the reason churches are being abandoned and turned to other uses is because the building is undergoing wear and tear? It's not because people are turning away from churches?
Look, there's a bit of that. There's duplication of churches in Scotland. You've got rival denominations in Wales. Chapels were built in the 19th century that people aren't using anymore. There's some churches that will close, but the majority of them could stay open if the resources are there. The best way actually to keep a church open is to put a for sale sign outside. Then everybody thinks, my gosh, this church might go. We want to save it.
Interesting.
True, isn't it? Use it or you're going to lose it. And it's just that reminder, because I'm apathetic, really, probably, towards my local church, but I'd be absolutely heartbroken if it did close down.
What a hypocrite you are.
I know.
Terrible.
Aren't we all, though?
But that's like what people said about Woolworths, isn't it? Oh, I love Woolworths. But when did you actually go, Isabel? But it's like pubs, it's like banks as well. The same sort of...
You mentioned pubs and banks. There are about 39,000 church buildings in the UK. That's more than there are pubs. So, you know, they're really vital local buildings for people, for children. How many concerts before COVID, choirs, music goes on in churches, food banks, most food banks are linked to a church. So we say, let's keep these buildings going. The Church of England calculates they need about £1 billion over the next 5 years to keep those buildings going.
So how do you feel in your professional role seeing a church turned into apartments, for instance?
Sometimes that's fine. If it's like in the middle of nowhere, there's no one going to the church, the church can make money by selling it off, but that should be the exception rather than the rule, to be honest. I mean, those churches weren't built to be luxury houses.
I think it's very sad when you see a pub turned into a nightclub, though. I mean, I think that's a form of desecration, really.
Yeah, well, there are a few churches that have been turned into nightclubs, even in London, and that is a form of desecration, I agree with you. I mean, they were built by the local community to be a local centre for worship for the community, and if it's just flogged off for commercial gain, that's the wrong thing to do.
The church I went to as a child, all through my childhood, got knocked down, but the diocese rebuilt it further down the road, but I always felt an attachment to the plot of land, which has now become a car park, because it was so close to a public busy station. But there are so many sacred things that happen within, like weddings, christenings. People will always attach memories, won't they, to that plot of land. And even from a religious perspective, would you argue, if it's deconsecrated, if it's no longer a religious building, do you think it does still have a religious meaning?
It's got some sort of community feel about it if it's still there. People recognise that used to be a church, but I think it's become luxury flats. It's hardly a religious building anymore. But let's look at churches in the UK. You've got everything from sort of wooden Saxon churches that are over 1,000 years old, through to sort of 20th century buildings made of concrete and breeze blocks, which may not be the most attractive buildings there, but they are community hubs. They're the centre of the community. It's where, war heroes are remembered, where community events take place, where kids went for Christmas carols. They mean something to people.
Yeah.
So closing them down
is
not the way forward.
If they do, and if you're watching this morning and suddenly we've reignited a connection between you and your church, whatever your denomination happens to be, what can people actually do about that?
Well, there are a number of things people can do. One is visit those churches. When you can go into those buildings, go and see what's in them, because you'll be really staggered as a tourist or a visitor. Another thing, if you've got DIY skills, volunteer to help. Churches need to have their, gutters cleared, their drain pipes sorted out, trees cut down. There often aren't many people in a church community who can do that, so volunteer to help with that building. Write to your MP, ask the government to come up with some more money. And from the National Churches Trust, we're the UK's church support buildings charity. If you Google National Churches Trust Future of Churches, we've got an online consultation. It's backed by Sir Michael Palin, who's supporting this campaign. We want to know what people think should happen to the UK's churches.
You might want to leave now, because later on we're going to be doing a sort of estate agent look around how a church can become a very nice residential flat or whatever it happens to be.
Stained glass window in your bedroom.
Eddie, thank you very much indeed for giving us such an insight and such a passionate defence and plea in favour of churches. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
Now, stay tuned our way on GB News today, because we'll be remembering the tragic killing of the Conservative MP David Amess, and before him, of course, Labour's Joe Cox, because we'll be speaking or hearing from the Labour MP Stephen Timms, who himself was stabbed in a constituency many years before. He luckily survived. He's been speaking to our Gloria De Piero as part of her Real Me series. Let's take a little look at that clip.
After it happened, after she was sentenced, I said to the police I would like to meet her then, to find out a bit more about what was going on. She was my constituent. I had met her. She'd come to Parliament with a school class previously, apparently. I mean, I don't recall the occasion, but she had. She'd grown up in my constituency and spent her life there. And I would have liked to have met her then. The police at the time said they didn't think that was a good idea, so I didn't pursue it. But now that the opportunity perhaps has arisen again, I'd welcome that.
Well, that was Stephen Timms speaking to Gloria De Piero in her Real Me segment that we broadcast in full here on GB News at 12:35.
I was just talking to Eddie as he was leaving there, and do you know what I think has spelt a real death knell for churches?
What?
Premier League football.
I knew there was a reason I wasn't into football.
Well, as soon as football became on television on a Sunday, people, you would just watch people who used to, men in particular, who used to go to church, would then go to clubs or stay at home.
Religion.
Well, football is a religion.
Yeah, that's what I mean. They've gone from Christianity to football. Sad.
Yeah.
Let us know your stories. What do you think about that? I feel a campaign coming on. Do you?
Well, also, you see, I have a friend who's Muslim, and he talks about his church and how it is like the gathering place for the community. where they go and they do everything, they swap everything from, what's going on in your family to your family, to recipes, to talk football, to do anything. So there's some very, very vibrant churches and reasons that they do exist as well. But that was our conversation today. It's just interesting.
Yeah, it is. Sign of the times. Let us know your thoughts. Stay with us. Coming up next, the Minister of State for Care and Mental Health, Gillian Keegan, is joining us on the programme. We'll be discussing all things COVID and restrictions are more on their way. That's after your forecast.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Good morning. A pretty cold one out there this morning, even colder tomorrow morning. Generally, though, today, most of us will see quite a bit of blue sky and the winds easing down compared to yesterday. Now, low pressure is pulling away to the east. There is this weather front that's weakening further west, and we're kind of between the two weather systems. So, as I said, for many it's dry and fine, but the winds are still coming down from the north and still pretty brisk across the northeast. Could be icy here through the morning as the showers keep on feeding down. Those showers chiefly of rain at low levels, but some snow over the hills, and a wintry mix in the showers too for Wales. But also here, the showers should fade through the day, and any across the southwest will be few and far between. For most of us, it's a fine, bright winter's day, and those winds continue to ease down. Temperatures, well, still on the chilly sides, but generally not feeling quite as cold as yesterday because of those lighter winds. However, light winds and clear skies this evening will allow a frost to form, and form pretty quickly. Temperatures really going to drop overnight tonight. A widespread frost forming. Temperatures likely to get down to -1, -2, even in towns and cities. Rural spots -5, -6. So a really cold start to Thursday. Further west, though, cloud is moving in. That will lift the temperatures and bring some rain to Northern Ireland. Bit of snow is possible over the hills here, but as the wet weather hits the colder air across North Wales, Northern England and Scotland, there will be more snow here over some of the higher routes. Shouldn't last too long, but it might make for some pretty grim travelling conditions for a time during the course of Thursday. Further south, it'll be mostly rain as temperatures eventually get up close to double figures. But for most elsewhere, it'll still feel pretty cold on Thursday, even though temporarily we have this milder air moving in. That shunts out of the way, cold air returns, and things could be icy with some snow showers in the northwest on Friday morning. Bye for now.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Hello there, I'm Eamonn.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farrar, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamonn Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamonn
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
On TV and DAB Plus radio, this is Breakfast on GB News. Thanks for watching and listening. Apparently, I would say, you know, if you were there, I would say to you, no worries, guys, absolutely brilliant. Apparently, you can't say no worries anymore, Isabel. It's been included in an annual list of sayings that academics, right, academics argue should be banished for being ineffective, baffling or irritating. Now, what is ineffective, baffling or irritating about saying, no worries, Isabel?
It's an Australian phrase, isn't it? It's the purists that get upset, but I literally just echoed that phrase. The floor manager came in, said something to us, and I said, no worries. And then I was like, oh, I've just committed the cardinal
you
sin.
had no worries. If it had come to me, I'd have said plenty of worries there.
But, it's, you know, it is Australian. It's the sort of neighboursisation of British language.
Well,
it's ever evolving, isn't
it? But there's so many things that are colloquial. You know, when I was growing up, you used to say, how are you? And you'd say, weaker.
Really?
Wheeker.
And that's a good thing, or is that a bad thing? Oh, I'm weaker.
It's a good thing.
Your phrase I'll always associate with you is, come here and I'll tell you.
Well, come here and
I'll tell you. Come here
and we will tell you what's happening in the news today, because here are the front pages. If you're just joining us on this is the day you sort of think, what day of the week is it?
It's hump day.
Wednesday, is it? Right?
Is,
okay.
there you go.
So here are the headlines. The Daily Mirror, first of all, reporting that ambulance chiefs are asking people with heart pain to make their own way to hospital. Now, that is scary. That really is.
Well, you know what?
Scary.
My mum actually did that this summer. She got a taxi to hospital whilst she was having a heart attack, and I'll tell you for free, the taxi driver did not enjoy that experience.
No,
he was
you see, but
worried.
it's not about just physically getting there. It's like getting treatment, getting oxygen, getting an adrenaline injection or something on the way. So it really is absolutely horrendous, and if I was Prime Minister, something would be done about that.
And can I just tell you the difference? If you make your own way, you have to then wait in the waiting room at A&E, whereas if you get taken in by an ambulance, you're automatically into a bay and seen by a doctor. And that was something my mum realised, because she's had consecutive heart attacks last year. She called an ambulance.
You see, here's what I don't understand about medicine. When you go to an emergency, when you go to an accident and emergency place, you are at your most serious, right? So therefore, why aren't all resources dedicated to that point?
Well, I think a lot of resources are dedicated to A&E, but, you know, it's under stress. It's under stress.
You shouldn't have a waiting time to be treated in an emergency room.
Some people were waiting 4 hours minimum.
There's lots of things you could strike off what the NHS do, but what they should be doing more of is treating people at emergency rooms, except then there's a lot of people turn up that shouldn't be there.
Well, this is it, usually drunks. Anyway, that's another story. Let's take a look at the Times this morning. The Prime Minister's comments at that press conference yesterday evening that we can get through the newest COVID wave without new curbs.
Guardian's headline takes the opposing view. It says, Johnson admits NHS could be overwhelmed in the coming weeks. So is it going to be, or it could be? We're going to be talking to a health minister about this very, very shortly.
The Daily Mail reporting that the former Defence Secretary to Tony Blair, Jeff Hoon, burned a secret memo stating the Iraq war could be illegal. He's apparently got evidence to back that up and given it to the paper.
Now, we've got a situation today. We were talking about the huge amount of churches that are being closed down and either knocked down or turned into other uses. One of those uses we're now going to find out from our reporter Anna Riley, who's in Harriga in Yorkshire this morning. So basically, let's see her. There we are. Now, Anna, tell us where you are and who you're with.
Good morning, Eamonn and Isabel. I'm with Mark Hinchcliffe here. We're at the chapel in Harriga. It's an amazing converted chapel building, 6 bedrooms. It was 2017 that Mark started the conversion work. Tell us about it here, Mark.
Well, the place is grade 2 listed, and it's an Italianate chapel. The scale of it is absolutely ridiculous. You can see here there's a sort of cavernous to it, 8,000 square foot. When you convert a building like this, you need to do something with it. I mean, obviously you could live in it, but in the case of this place, I actually decided to open it as a bed and breakfast and a venue, because the architecture and the design and the styling in here is so elaborate, but it being built of an Italianate style. you need to show the place off. And I'm also a collector, as you can see, probably in the background. I've got a lot of furniture and design and art. So you need to make the place have something that connects with it, and certainly in a listed building, to be honest with you. It also regenerates the area. I think that's the most important thing. You get these buildings of a certain size, and when you kind of convert them, you actually regenerate the whole area, and you set off a new catalyst for maybe the town or whatever it might well be. So it's makes it an interesting place.
And what's it like living here? There's been talk. Is it a scary place to live? I know when we were having a chat, you said you weren't religious, but it sort of has sparked some religion in you living here.
Yeah, I'd like to say I was a humanist when I arrived here, and obviously everybody who comes to stay here asks me, said, "Oh, is the place haunted?" It's always one of those things. But there's a fantastic sort of karma here. In fact, I've had some amazing guests visit from all over the world of, famous people and interesting characters. And there is a sort of spiritualness that comes to the place. There's a lovely karma. I mean, I've sat here in this kind of atrium at 3:30 in the morning reading the newspaper and never felt scared at all. So there is a lovely sort of kind of man, woman, beast, whoever's running the ether above us. There's definitely a karma in what goes on in this building.
And have you had that feedback from your guests as well when they've come to stay?
Yeah, well, we get a lot of couples that have got children and whatever else, and they always say they're up at 6:30, 7 o'clock or whatever else. But quite often, 2 hours later, they finally turn up out of bed and they come down for the breakfast and say that they've just had the most amazing sleep. And I said, well, it's the karma in this building. So, yeah.
So no ghosts, just karma, chilled out, relaxed.
No, I'm the only ghost here.
So no ghosts here, Eamonn, just an amazing transformed building and putting this building to use as well. And it looks fantastic. I'll have to show you around later.
I'm sure I saw something over your shoulder before you say there's no ghosts, but anyway, there you go. Thank you. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. So there's one news that a church has been put
Where do you stand on the whole argument about what should be done with disused churches? Let us know your thoughts this morning.
I'm big on community. I genuinely think, when people have fairs and raffles and all sorts of things, just where communities mix together is a good thing. Yeah. But if you're going to head there by train, well, you may be in for a bit of trouble, because a secret government plan could be causing you massive headaches in the next month. We've got the details after this.
Hello there, I'm Eamonn.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamonn Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamonn
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
Just after 7:30, a very good morning to you. This is Eamonn and Isabel, and this is Breakfast on GB News. Welcome to you if you're listening to us on radio this morning on DAB+. And of course, hello, good morning and welcome to everybody watching us on TV.
Time now to take you through the headlines this morning. Nicola Sturgeon is to address the Scottish Parliament later today on any possible changes to restrictions. The First Minister will speak in Holyrood at 2 p.m. Opposition parties have called for the 10-day isolation period to be cut to 7 if someone tests negative twice.
Airline bosses are calling for testing requirements for international travel to be ditched. Research commissioned by an airlines group suggests they make little difference in reducing the spread of Omicron and have made passenger numbers plummet by 30%.
North Korea has launched an unidentified projectile into the sea. The Japanese Coast Guard, which first reported the launch, said it could be a ballistic missile, but has not provided further details. The UN, of course, prohibits North Korea from ballistic and nuclear weapons tests.
And let's take a look now at today's front pages. We begin with the Telegraph.
Testing rules are to be relaxed. Trains, bin collections and schools are, of course, being hit by the chaos. The Daily Mirror reports that ambulance chiefs are asking people with heart pain to make their own way to hospital in order to cope with less drivers. Let us know your thoughts on that story this morning. Of course, incredibly difficult to get to hospital if you are suffering a heart attack. And of course, if you make your own way into A&E, we all know that that also means you then have to wait in the waiting area rather than being taken straight in by an ambulance to see the medics. Here's the Times front page, is looking at the Prime Minister's comments that we can get through the newest COVID wave without new curbs. The Guardian's headline takes the opposing view, stating Johnson admits NHS could be overwhelmed in the coming weeks. The Daily Mail reports that the former Defence Secretary to Tony Blair has burned a secret memo stating that the Iraq War could be illegal. The Independent's headline says hospitals are worried about their ability to care for patients due to rising COVID cases. The Eye looks at key workers needing daily tests in order to limit the spread of the Omicron variant in key sectors. Here's your Express. It goes back to Boris Johnson's comments that the UK can find a way to ride out the rest of the pandemic. The Sun also discussing the Prime Minister's riding of the wave. Sounds like he's going surfing, noting that the large numbers isolating are still damaging schools. Well, it's that time in the programme when we go through your morning papers, so you don't even have to step foot outside. We'll take you through them for you. We're joined this morning by Martin Daubney and John Smith. Very happy to have you back on with us this morning. And of course, Martin, we used to review the papers many years ago together. It's lovely to see you again.
It's like getting the band back together.
It is,
Beautiful.
indeed, indeed.
Might be the new boy in the band, please.
You could be the new boy, yeah, or you could be the manager, given your experience as a sports agent. Listen, let's start, shall we, John, with a story you've picked from the Times. Ericsson says that he died for 5 minutes. Tell me more.
Yeah, this was the championships in the summer, and he had a heart attack on the pitch. Now, if you're going to have a heart attack, it's a good place to have one because there are a lot of medics on site. I mean, no place is a good place to have a heart attack. No. But if you're going to have one, that's a good place. Which leads me to a couple of thoughts. Firstly, there's been a lot more of these recently. Now, I am not an anti-vaxxer, but there's normally about half a dozen of these high-level sporting heart-associated, heart-related incidents in any 3-month period. Mm-hmm. In the last 3 months, there's been 118 across the planet. Mm-hmm. Now, that may just be coincidence.
I mean, across the planet of 9 billion people, it puts into perspective. But there's
6
certainly,
instead of 118 is a number.
You're tapping into, within your industry, the sports world, a real concern that is alive and well, rightly or wrongly, and that's why I suppose we've seen so many footballers who haven't wanted to get jabbed, which is obviously
a lot of them are
a worry.
And I think they should. My personal opinion, no more than that. But it's just that vaccine needs to be further examined in many ways, which it will be, to see if it does have any effect on high-performance sportsmen. The other thing I just want to say very quickly is defibrillators are essential. there are many at these grounds. Every sports club, every shopping centre should have one just in case.
So my local defibrillator got nicked, would you believe?
Well,
but just going back to vaccines, I just think it's always important we have a responsibility to reiterate what the Prime Minister said in his presser yesterday. 90% of those in ICU have not had their booster. 60% haven't been vaccinated at all. There are very good reasons that all people should get their vaccines. Martin, talk about politics a little bit, because, you know, we saw Boris Johnson yesterday, new look, haircut, sharp suit, perhaps lost a bit of weight, I don't want to speculate. He's trying to up his game, isn't he? Not least because we saw Sir Keir Starmer yesterday trying to capitalise on those gains that the Labour Party have made in the polls.
Yeah, it's an extraordinary state of affairs that an 80-seat majority is now turning into a 16-point approval rating lead for Keir Starmer, a man who was politically dead in the water 2 years ago. And yesterday, there was a kind of keynote speech for 2022 which Starmer delivered in Birmingham, setting out the Labour Party's vision. I want to pick up on two things that really stick in my craw as a former Labour voter and now a sort of reclaimed party deputy leader. First of all, is Starmer's newfound love for the Union flag. He's suddenly deciding that the Labour Party is patriotic, which might come as a surprise to those of us who remember Emily Thornberry's contempt for the St George's flag. The party is riddled with people who would like to abolish the monarchy. In fact, Starmer himself, in a leaked video in 2005, called for the abolition of the monarchy. There is widespread desire within the Labour Party to split up the Union. They support Scottish separatism, a united Ireland.
Does Keir Starmer support that?
Within the party ranks.
Okay.
So what I'm saying is...
Yeah, I mean, we could say that about both parties.
Yeah, but no, it's all fair and well for him to drape himself in the Union flag. And a second point, he wants to make Brexit work, he said. Well, that's a great surprise to me as a former Brexit Party MEP, because he led the People's Vote movement to cancel Brexit for 3 solid years. So I think this is a phony patriotic move because they know they've got a bad PR problem, particularly in the Red Wall. This cultural appropriation of the Union flag, to me, is bogus, it's fake, and I don't think the electorate will buy it.
That's so interesting. OK, so we've got a Labour sceptic over here, former Labour voter. Your dad was a coal miner, wasn't he? So you know,
born and bred
Labour. I'm not going to ask you your political persuasions, but it is very interesting trying to see the Labour Party reinvent themselves. And a lot of people coming out yesterday and saying, actually, the successes that Labour are enjoying at the moment are not thanks to Sir Keir Starmer himself, but actually just through the multifarious failings of the current government. I mean, what do you think about that?
I think a lot of own goals by the Conservative Party. I think Starmer's jumping all over it. I mean, I heard Starmer's speech yesterday. That could have been written by any leader, any time over the last 10 years. It was, let's do this because the British public think that and we want to do that. There was nothing of any substance.
But is that what... Do we really want somebody who's going to be grabbing the headlines and being sensational? That's what Boris does. You know, the case that Sir Keir Starmer was trying to make was, I'm going to have a straight leadership. This is my covenant with the British people. And when you see the kind of Prime Minister that we've ended up with in the form of Boris Johnson, many people would say, actually, Sir Keir Starmer, with his background, having been head of the CPS in the UK, would be just what you need in a time of national crisis.
I can't disagree with anything that you've just said, except I want someone who's going to lead the country, who's going to look at the issues that we are all going to face, such as, in the next 6 months, a lot of people are going to be financially destitute. I want people to talk about how do we manage the coming energy crisis? How do we manage the current food cost crisis? I am not bothered what the British public think of the politicians and what they think about the British public thinking of the politicians. Let's talk about real issues, not ethereal. I can invent a word, can't I? Ethereal political statements.
Martin, you know, we're making it like a binary choice between Boris or Sir Keir Starmer. The reality is, some people suggesting Boris might not even be here in a year. Is Boris toast, in your opinion? Do you think Liz Truss or Rishi Sunak could soon be at the helm?
Yeah, I think Boris was the useful idiot of the Conservative Party. I do, because he was a winner. He appropriated the message of the Brexit Party, get Brexit done, neutralised that and made it a binary choice on the Brexit referendum, which has been rolling on at that point for 5 years. And so it's a great piece of electioneering, but I think it's proven to be a liability now. And the approval ratings show that. And I think he's had a bad lockdown.
To be fair, mid-term, you never get very good approval ratings in polls, and we also know polls aren't always that accurate. And, you know, many people will say no one can win elections like Boris does, in spite of the gaffes. I mean, Liz Truss, will she be laying the golden goose of electoral votes in the same way Boris does? I don't know.
Well, I think she has more neutrality, she's more businesslike, she's less of a clown. You know, she's a key Brexiteer, which I think will wash well with the Tory voters. Starmer, in comparison, he's like a cheese sandwich. He's like a digestive biscuit to me. It's like, he doesn't get me going. He's a Mr. Magnolia, and that's a big problem because people like personality politics. They don't like overtly personality politics, which Boris has shown us. But Starmer is forgettable. And as I say, draping himself in the Union flag and suddenly caring about Brexit, it just doesn't wash.
Yeah, the whole flag thing, I know a lot of people get exercised by. But for me, what I think stood out from that speech yesterday from Starmer was there was just a lack of policy.
Yeah.
And as you're saying, you know, what actually is Labour, or indeed Boris Johnson, going to do about the cost of living crisis? And we know what Boris Johnson's going to do about it. He's going to increase national insurance in April.
Which I think is ridiculous. I mean, really, there's a time and there's a place. And I know the finances are, inverted commas, professional statement, knackered. And they will be for a while. We've been through a pandemic. But the most important thing is that people need to live and need to be looking to the future with some sort of confidence about their ability to have a life. And that's what I want our government to articulate. We've gone into personality politics, as Martin says, all around the world. Trump, even Macron in France, he came from nowhere. He was a bit young, a bit inexperienced. Well, he wasn't. He's been around for a while, but he had this whole new feel about him. Boris, and we want substance behind that.
Yeah, but isn't that then why Sir Keir Starmer is the antidote to personality politics? He might be boring, he might be a cheese sandwich. Then don't talk ethereal nonsense. I mean, are you a Trump supporter?
I understood why Trump won. In fact, as I recall, back in the days of Sky, I predicted that he would win the presidential election. Yeah, I mean, because, you know, he was pressing the right buttons. And that's what Boris did with Brexit. I think Starmer doesn't do that. In his attempt to please everybody, he's pleasing sort of nobody. And I think you are right, midterms on midterms, take it with a pinch of salt. But they need some vision. They need a fresh alternative. And I don't think we're seeing that. And that's why, you know, I joined the Reclaim Party, and I think there is time for something new, something more vibrant. They're weak on immigration. They're weak on lockdowns. They want sooner, harder, longer lockdowns. And they're weak on green taxes, which are going to cripple the working classes especially. They want more of that. They want more net zero. And I think that's the problem. It's just more of the same. We need something fresh and different.
OK, let's lighten the mood before people go to work or school utterly miserable from this pay-per-view. This is, I mean, it might not necessarily set them off on the best foot, but John Smith, you spotted this story in the Sun newspaper about a very disrespectful postman. Tell us more.
Oh, I love this. It's page 15 of The Sun.
What's the headline?
It's called Wetterbox.
Oh, it gives you a hint.
Yeah, it's... Do any of you have Ring doorbells? Apparently the footage is not admissible in a court of law, and I'm not a mad keen of people photographing you wherever you are and being and doing, and I've got a Tesla, and a Tesla on Sentry mode films people if they get near the car. And there was a court case about this, the first one last week. So we're living in this world.
Was that admissible out of interest?
Well, that was.
Right, OK.
Yeah,
so this is the footage on a doorbell at somebody's house.
This is a Ring doorbell, and the postman excused himself.
Oh, no, in the bushes?
In the bushes, in sight of the Ring doorbell.
And, of course, The Sun have posted that picture in all its glory.
It's called Wetterbox, and, you know, I had to have a little snigger.
Yeah, it's very funny, but I'd be absolutely fuming if I caught my postman.
I agree.
But although, is there some argument that it's supposed to be good for your plants?
I agree with you.
I know, I quite like this. You're welcome any time on this show. And let's talk about darts, shall we? What a day it was yesterday. Let's talk about Peter Wright.
Yeah, I just want to talk about darts, I think, being a hugely positive lockdown guilty pleasure for many people. It's the last of the politically incorrect sports. The final this year looked like 2019. It was like a big 3,000 people, booze up, no social distancing, the crowd shouting, stand up if you hate Boris. By the way, a few years ago, they dressed up as Diane Abbott and held up 190 placards because of a famous mathematical ineptitude. But it's a hugely positive thing to watch. And the champion, Peter Wright, is a former tyre fitter with a red Mohican. Now, you don't get that in football anymore.
Martin, let me tell you, my ex-boyfriend once took me to the darts.
Did you like it?
Cardiff. There's a reason he's my ex-boyfriend.
Right.
It wasn't for me. But you know what? It was hugely popular.
Can I say one thing?
Yeah.
I've worked with elite sportsmen for the last 30-odd years, and I've watched how they train, how they've conditioned their mind and their body. I want to ask Peter Wright, what's his training regime?
Was it pot noodles? Wasn't that what he did?
Yeah, Stellar's,
famously? And it was really good to see a female emerging in darts as well. You know,
but I do agree with Martin. It does engender good fun at sport, and sometimes sport gets a little bit too serious.
Seriously, but you know, when I went to this darts whatever you want to call it, what do you call it? A darts?
What darts? Was it a final?
Championship or something.
Yeah.
It seemed to me like it was a stag do for however many thousand men all in one go.
You nailed it.
Yeah, it was just a giant stag do, and I'm sure there was a bit of some of this Wetterbox stuff going on under the table, you name it. All right, well, listen, look, I've loved going through the papers with you. John Smith, Martin Daubney, thank you very much for joining me this morning. Eamonn will be back with you in the next hour.
Right.
In just under 10 years, more than 400 churches have closed down in England, with the figures showing that 940 churches were shut between 1987 and 2019. Now, this has caused some members of the clergy to worry about the survival of their places of worship. But what is it like to actually live in one? With us now is Father Marcus Walker. And Father Marcus Walker is the rector of Great St Bartholomew in the City of London. Father, do you see this as a religious issue or an economical one?
I would say it's a little bit of both. You've got obviously the decline in the number of people attending churches that we've seen since the 1950s, and we've seen the number go down and down and down. But you've also got the huge pressure, financial pressure, on parishes that is being heaped up by the diocese that are sort of run, I suppose, all the parishes in an area, and that make it increasingly difficult to be able to maintain churches.
To use a Dad's Army phrase, are you all doomed?
Oh, I jolly well hope not. I would have thought we are. Actually, in some ways, there's an awful lot of hope at the moment. You've got, right now, I mean, on the religious question, for the first time in maybe 60, 70 years, the big questions of life are being asked at the moment. We're actually exploring questions of life and death in the way that hasn't really been explored for a long time. Financially, actually, there are all sorts of things that could be done, that need to be done, that actually could make it sustainable for so many parishes across the country.
What would your recipe for survival be?
Recipe for survival?
Yeah.
I suppose there are three things, really. The first thing is that so many churches are Grade 1 listed buildings. I think something like half of all of the Grade 1 listed buildings in this country are churches. They're looked after by increasingly elderly members of the congregation, and that's unsustainable. And at some point, there's going to have to be a conversation between church and state about how to look after these ancient buildings. And when that happens, suddenly the burden of fundraising to be able to keep roofs on will be lifted from increasingly fewer and older members of the congregation and shared out among the community. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that the times when the ways in which monies that are actually raised by churches, local churches, for local churches, can actually continue to be spent on local church needs to be properly addressed. Since the 70s, there's been an asset grab where all of the endowments of the local churches got nicked by the diocese and the church commissioners. All the parsonages, the vicarages, the rectories that were built by parishioners, excuse me, my cat's just turned up here, that were built by parishioners, suddenly are being sold off. And in fact, there was a study that the Telegraph ran about 5 years ago that showed that £8 billion was squandered in the sale of those parsonages. Actually, if we actually start reinvesting in the local and allow local churches to be able to build themselves up again, there's a huge scope for those churches to be able to survive. And then the ones that can't build up their own assets to be supported by others.
The ones that haven't survived, does your heart sink when you walk past one and you see that it's been turned into a restaurant or a nightclub?
Oh, yes. There's always something tragic about a dead church. There's something that speaks of the slow withdrawal of the tide of Christianity. There's something that speaks of the loss of a community space, because the thing about a church building, is it's been built by that community. It's been built by the people who live there, who've prayed there, people who've never indeed gone into the church, but their families have been buried there. It speaks of that place and the people who've lived there, worked there, been born there, died there. And suddenly that community asset's been privatized, being given off to become a swimming pool or a nightclub or a private home. And there's some deep sadness about that.
But you don't feel, Father, that the battle on this is lost. You see hope for the future. You see a different way of using churches. You see that because in crises like the pandemic, people want to be closer together. They want a sense of the community, and that is expressed through the church.
Very much. Very much. I mean, actually, just simply on the saving the churches and the Church of England, you know, it's greatly heartening that we've just had a general election in the Church of England for our own little parliament, where 150 members of it have been elected on the Save the Parish ticket, pledging to see what we can do to ensure that money flows back upstream to the parishes where the money's actually earned and raised. So there's real hope there. There's real hope that the Church of England's actually listening to all this. And there's real hope that nationally, this is a question that's going to start interesting people well beyond the church. As you say, there are so many ways in which church buildings can be used for the community, and they are being used. They're being used as post offices, they're being used as cafes, they're being used as play centres. There are so many ways in which it can be used, as well as being used for their essential purpose. You know, and the true meaning of the word essential.
Yeah, but what state of health and what usage is being put on Great St Bartholomew's? You're there, you're in the City of London. What would you say the state of health of your church is?
St Bartholomew's, I think it's pretty healthy, actually. We've got a good congregation. We're supported. We've got a lot of support in the local community, although we're not a usual church. We're in the City of London. You know, the parish boundary is tiny. And the number of people who live in it, being a city, is quite small. But we've got a good congregation coming in. We're well supported by people in the local community and in the area around. And we're used, I mean, I'm biased, but, you know, I think we're one of the most beautiful churches in the city. It's a 12th century church. It's got beautiful acoustics. It's used for concerts. It's often used by members of the community for all sorts of things when they'd like to be able to use it, as well as, of course, for weddings and marriages, weddings and funerals and everything else. But although, of course, for weddings, having had 4 weddings and a funeral filmed in the church, although the one where Hugh Grant got punched, we're a rather surprising venue for weddings, but it does happen quite often.
Well, an even worse wedding I was watching over the Christmas holidays, was in the Vicar of Dibley, and where the Reverend Geraldine Granger was getting married. But it has a lovely, cosy feel of a programme that has, and a sense of community and interdenominational as well, which is everything that you are trying to do. So, Father, I just want to say to you, go in peace, and thank you very much indeed for your time this morning.
And thank you.
Thank you very much.
Coming up on Breakfast with Eamonn and Isabel, hospitals across the country are declaring critical incidents as the NHS says it's in a state of crisis. Have you seen an emergency at your local hospital? Find out after this weather.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Good morning. A pretty cold one out there this morning, even colder tomorrow morning. Generally, though, today, most of us will see quite a bit of blue sky and the winds easing down compared to yesterday. Now, low pressure is pulling away to the east. There is this weather front that's weakening further west, and we're kind of between the two weather systems. So, as I said, for many it's dry and fine, but the winds are still coming down from the north and still pretty brisk across the northeast. Could be icy here through the morning as the showers keep on feeding down. Those showers chiefly of rain at low levels, but some snow over the hills, and a wintry mix in the showers too for Wales. But also here, the showers should fade through the day, and any across the southwest will be few and far between. For most of us, it's a fine, bright winter's day, and those winds continue to ease down. Temperatures, well, still on the chilly sides, but generally not feeling quite as cold as yesterday because of those lighter winds. However, light winds and clear skies this evening will allow a frost to form, and form pretty quickly. Temperatures really going to drop overnight tonight. A widespread frost forming. Temperatures likely to get down to -1, -2, even in towns and cities. Rural spots -5, -6. So a really cold start to Thursday. Further west, though, cloud is moving in. That will lift the temperatures and bring some rain to Northern Ireland. Bit of snow is possible over the hills here, but as the wet weather hits the colder air across North Wales, Northern England and Scotland, there will be more snow here over some of the higher routes. Shouldn't last too long, but it might make for some pretty grim travelling conditions for a time during the course of Thursday. Further south, it'll be mostly rain as temperatures eventually get up close to double figures. But for most elsewhere, it'll still feel pretty cold on Thursday, even though temporarily we have this milder air moving in. That shunts out of the way, cold air returns, and things could be icy with some snow showers in the northwest on Friday morning. Bye for now.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Hello there, I'm Eamonn.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamonn Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamonn
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
Hello, wherever you're waking up this morning. It's just gone 8 o'clock on this Wednesday, the 5th of January. This is Breakfast on GB News on TV and radio.
Yeah, you can find us on DAB+. If you're watching us before you head off to work or indeed going on the school run, don't forget when you turn off your TV, switch on your radio and you can take us all the way with you.
If you're already listening, drop us a message, GB News at GB Views, or tweet us at GB News. Coming up this morning.
Riding the wave, Boris Johnson wants critical workers to test daily to avoid more COVID restrictions. But with hospitals under increasing pressure, is this possible?
We'll also be speaking to a professor of microbiology about restrictions and jabs and what COVID measures are sustainable in the long term.
Plus, we'll be looking ahead to some of the biggest news in sport with the broadcaster and friend of the show, Paul Coit, who'll be joining us in the studio.
And all this morning we've been talking about heavenly homes with so many churches closing down right across the country. Would you actually live in one? Would you live in an abandoned church?
So join the conversation. Get in touch. GBViews at gbnews.uk or tweet us at GBNews.
Steve Frum has got in touch via Twitter, and he says, I once house sat in a vicarage for a few months that had been built on part of the graveyard of the church next door. In the garden, there were a few grave-shaped depressions where the bodies had been exhumed. Oh. Some strange things happened while we lived there.
Oh my gosh, tell us more, Steve. Like what? Or maybe don't tell us more. This is coming from somebody who haven't given their name on Twitter. I'm all for converting these buildings if they're not getting used. Too many well-built buildings by me have been demolished and junk has been built in its place. I definitely think that there has to be a life in a disused church, certainly. It shouldn't be the end for those buildings. We've also been talking about bins this morning. Yeah. Have your bins been collected? So many staff, 1.2 million Brits off work at the moment because of Omicron, and lots of people's bins aren't being collected. What are they saying, Eamonn?
Well, Martin's bin has been collected. Martin says, my bin men have been great. Always go in the extra mile and take all the rubbish. They definitely deserve a pay rise. Worth their weight in gold.
Phil Berto on Twitter says, there's one man to solve this. Who's that going to be? Let's see. Who've they suggested? Old Phil Berto. Is that Homer Simpson? We need a bit of Homer.
On top of a bin.
We asked a little while ago, and we were talking about this subject, didn't we, if anybody knew what the purpose was of a blue bottle fly, because them and maggots, they are the absolute worst side effect of bins piling up. Well, I'm pleased to say one of you's got in touch. This is Jill. She says, flies are nature's clean-up crew. They lay eggs on rotting flesh, the eggs hatch into maggots, and they clear it up. If people don't want flies and maggots, don't leave so much rubbish. We also asked about wasps. What are wasps for, says Robert Brown? I'll tell you. They are actually a vast order comprising thousands of species with many functions. There would be no figs without wasps, he says, to pollinate them. Figs.
Figs?
I love figs.
I love figs too, but what's a wasp got to do with a fig?
Apparently there'd be none without them. Yellow jackets, which is a type of, this is very detailed, I'll try and skim through, a type of wasp. They're mainly predators, but as such, they're important in restricting numbers of pests, so they're very useful to farmers and to crops, I believe. Keep those thoughts coming. We like a little bit of expert punter opinion as well, Robert Brown.
I wouldn't bite into a fig and get a wasp.
No. But I would. No, but it's the flies that keep. Is it? Well, I'm kind of confused now.
It's all part of nature,
isn't it?
Each one has a role to play there.
There you go.
OK, let's talk about COVID and latest government measures. The Prime Minister wants 100,000 critical workers to take daily tests in the hope that England can ride out the Omicron wave without more restrictions.
Let's have a listen to what he said at that press conference yesterday.
Anyone who thinks our battle with COVID is over, I'm afraid, is profoundly wrong. This is a moment for the utmost caution. Together with the Plan B measures that we introduced before Christmas, we have a chance to ride out this Omicron wave without shutting down our country once again. We can keep our schools and our businesses open, and we can find a way to live with this virus.
Well, that was the Prime Minister speaking at a press conference yesterday. But meanwhile, hospitals across the country are declaring critical incidents as hospitalisations rise and staff levels fall. For more on this, let's speak to our news reporter, Amelia Harper. She joins us from Milton Keynes University Hospital this morning. Very good morning to you, Amelia. So on the one hand, the Prime Minister's saying, let's ride out this wave. But on the other hand, he's also saying he's expecting many parts of the NHS to be overwhelmed.
Well, that's right, and many places, at least 6 hospital trusts have declared a critical incident, and what this is that health bosses are concerned that they cannot continue to provide priority care like cancer services, for example. That totals about 11 hospitals across the country, and this is all because the NHS is becoming overwhelmed due to pressure from the Omicron COVID variant. For the first time in the UK, we saw a record high in terms of numbers of daily COVID cases that topped 200,000. And at that press conference last night, we heard what that was doing to hospitals, and 15,000 people in England were in hospital with coronavirus as of yesterday morning. We also heard at the press conference last night Boris Johnson saying that up to 90% of people who were in intensive care with coronavirus had not had their booster, and 61% of those in intensive care had not had a vaccine at all. It is worth saying, though, that at the conference it was said that Omicron is now known to be milder than other variants. However, but the mortality rate also hasn't increased. So that is some good news and a glimmer of hope, I suppose, from that press conference. But what is this all doing in terms of hospital staff shortages? Well, 10% of NHS staff are currently absent due to coronavirus. At least 6 NHS trusts have declared a critical incident as a result of pressures due to Omicron. And what this essentially does, it allows them to receive extra help and to have staff then redeployed across the country to help ease those pressures. Which hospitals are trustworthy? Well, University Hospitals, Plymouth NHS Trust, actually their Derriford Hospital declared a major incident because they had nearly 500 staff absent due to coronavirus. Elsewhere in Wiltshire, the Great Western Hospital Health Trust. Elsewhere, United Lincolnshire's Hospital NHS Health Trust. In the northwest, the Morecambe Bay NHS Trust, and in Blackpool, their Teaching Hospitals NHS Foundation Trust as well. Now, looking ahead, as you said, Isabel, Boris Johnson says there will be times in the coming weeks at some point everywhere in the country where NHS trusts are going to feel temporarily overwhelmed, and he says we are going to see a challenging few weeks ahead. Here where I am at Middleton, in Milton Keynes at the University Hospital NHS Foundation Trust, their CEO Joe Harrison says they haven't had to declare a major incident yet. However, he says pressure is rising on the hospital. COVID patients have doubled in the last week. Staff sickness is increasing, and he says they are preparing for this to get worse.
OK, Amelia, thanks very much indeed. Let's bring in the Professor of Microbiology now at the University of Reading, Dr. Simon Clark. A very good morning to you. Look, I wonder what you make of that press conference then yesterday. The Prime Minister being characteristically optimistic, perhaps for political reasons, but saying we've got to ride this wave. But at the same time, 1.2 million people off work at the moment because of the virus. What did you make of it all?
I thought that he's clearly decided that the pressures on the NHS, although they're going to be pretty severe, I think, in the coming weeks, are politically manageable. And I've been saying for the past nearly 2 years now that these are political decisions, and only one of the factors that is taken into consideration by politicians is scientific evidence. And I think that was clear yesterday. He's decided that this is something that can be coped with.
Yeah, well, obviously, a number of NHS trusts, Professor, believe that it is something that they can't cope with. So, what is the reality?
Well, we're going to find out. This business of testing people in critical industries or critical sectors of the workforce is actually, in the immediate term, going to find more people who are infected but don't know it, and therefore take them out of the workforce. So I think it's going to put even greater pressure in the immediate term on those hospitals, and we'll see just exactly how they do manage. I don't think the promise of help from the military is going to make all that much impact, because the Defence Medical Services are relatively small, and about a third of them are reservists who work in the NHS anyway.
And often we need specialists in certain fields. It's all right saying, you replace a nurse with a nurse, but that nurse may not have the same skills as the nurse that they are replacing.
Indeed. For example, intensive care. Now, it looks, and fingers crossed, that we're not going to get extreme pressure put on intensive care, just other sectors of the health service. But not all nurses are trained to work in intensive care, and it takes a time to be trained up and to become competent and safe. And that's going to provide problems as well. It's simply not as straightforward as putting in people to cover other people's jobs, not every time anyway.
It's me to conclude. I sit and I look at the Prime Minister last night and I listen to someone like you today. I see the trusts declaring major incidents and I just think Boris is bluffing. What do you think?
I do think there's an element of bluff, yeah, let's put it that way. And I do think within the coming weeks, the circumstances are going to change. But exactly how he responds to that, I couldn't say. I don't know. But I don't think we'll be in the same situation in a couple of weeks' time.
OK, that's interesting. So do you think then this is the beginning of the end of the pandemic as we know it, of these kind of restrictions that affect all of our lives? I mean, once this variant has passed through and the isolation starts to go down, do you think we can start to hope for a bit more normality?
I think that's probably in a couple of months' time rather than a couple of weeks' time. I think things will get worse. And Boris Johnson admitted to that things will get worse before they get better. But, eventually we will come through this. And it's not guaranteed, although it is possible that things could be bad in the future. But we will eventually come through this. This variant will burn through society, like that, relatively quickly, and it will run out of people to infect.
Well, Doctor, it's Omicron we're talking about this year. What will we be talking about next year? Will there be another and another and another variant?
That's entirely possible. This idea that sort of gained hold that absolutely, definitely viruses or any infectious agent always becomes less pathogenic, less able to cause disease is simply not true. They absolutely can do that, but the idea that it's a sort of inevitability just isn't true. So we don't know what the future holds.
Can I just ask you, sorry, just very quickly, about these changes to PCR testing that we're hearing? It was on the front of the Telegraph this morning that they're expected to change the rules on that so that anyone who tests positive on a lateral flow, at the moment they have to then get a PCR and they don't count that isolation time until the start of a positive test from a PCR. That's to be scrapped, which means the isolation period would start from the point of a positive lateral flow. Can you see any problems with that in terms of when the isolation period ends? Oh, you see, my long explanation killed that off.
Your question was so long.
It's so complicated, I know. Well, do you know what? We'll talk about it later on.
Money run out on the meter.
I tried. Never mind.
What was the point you were trying to make?
They're trying to reduce isolation times without reducing isolation times by saying you're positive from the minute you get a positive lateral flow rather than from the point of a positive PCR.
When your test comes back.
Yeah, which might mean more people can get back to work sooner.
Which would save a couple of days.
Yeah, I just wanted to know what his scientific thought on that was.
Well, why didn't you just say that?
I was trying.
Okay.
We ran out of time. Never mind.
There you go. Let's look at the headlines. This is where they're looking on this Wednesday morning. The American judge in the sexual abuse case against Prince Andrew says he'll have a decision very soon on whether or not he will dismiss the case.
The Duke of York's lawyers argue he's covered by a deal that was struck between his accuser, Virginia Giuffre, and the convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. She, of course, claims that Prince Andrew sexually assaulted her when she was 17, a claim he denies.
As we've been hearing, at least 6 hospital trusts have declared critical incidents amid staff shortages due to COVID. Hospitals in Greater Manchester are postponing some what are termed non-urgent surgeries, and I'm sure they're very urgent to the people who are due to receive them. Prime Minister's acknowledged parts of the NHS may feel overwhelmed in the coming days. 218,000 confirmed cases in England and Scotland yesterday. That's the highest number since the pandemic began.
Tony Blair's former Defence Secretary Jeff Hoon says he was ordered by Number 10 to burn a secret memo that said the invasion of Iraq could be illegal. When the claim first came out in 2015, Blair dismissed it, saying it was nonsense. But Mr Hoon has revealed details of the alleged cover-up to the Daily Mail. Over 600,000 people have now signed a petition demanding the former Labour Prime Minister be stripped of his knighthood.
The French President Emmanuel Macron has said he wants to get on the nerves of unvaccinated people by restricting their freedoms.
His comments have sparked a backlash from his opponents who say the words aren't presidential. France has one of the highest vaccination rates in Europe at more than 90%, but saw more than 270,000 new COVID cases yesterday.
A memorial for the victims of the Manchester Arena bombing attack opens today. Called the Glade of Light, it's a white marble halo that bears the names of the 22 people killed at an Ariana Grande concert in May 2017. Families who lost loved ones have been able to put memory capsules inside the halo.
Oh, that looks utterly beautiful, doesn't it? It shows the importance of sacred spaces, really. And in a decade, more than 400 churches have closed. And analysts of the Church of England have found that 940 of its churches were shut between 1987 and 2019.
Well, this has caused members of the clergy to worry about the survival of churches. But what is it like to live in one? Our Yorkshire reporter Anna Riley will tell you. Not that she lives in one, but she's in one where people do live. Here we go, Anna.
Good morning. Yes, I'm with Mark Hinchliffe. He's the owner here of the chapel in Harriga. He converted the building in 2017. Mark, just tell us a little bit about what made you do this conversion and how you got into it.
Well, I think you've slightly got to be a madman to convert a building like this. First and foremost, I'm in love with architecture and design. Secondly, I'm a massive art collector, so I had to house my furniture and artworks, as you can see behind me. But thirdly, I think anybody doing a kind of project of this scale, you've got to be slightly crazy, because not only do you need foresight, you need a whole lot of money. And unfortunately, in this country, there is no funding for these listed buildings. Unless you are a Grade 1 listed building, there's actually no funding whatsoever. So you've got to have a decent bank manager or get somebody on your own side. And then you're also, in the case of us, you sort of walk into no man's land, because nobody wants to lend you money when you're trying to get a planning permission on a building that's technically not a house. So it's very easy in a normal day you'd get a mortgage on a standard house, but actually in this case you need to borrow money at a high interest rate and a commercial rate. So it becomes very unviable to do these buildings, and hence why they always end up falling apart, and the roof's off and there's leaks and all the rest of it. So it's a difficult thing to do. You've got to be brave.
But obviously you've made a great success of it here. You've got it running as a B&B. And what's it like living here as well? Because there's been talk, is it scary living in a church? Do you feel a presence here?
There's a sort of strange magic here. There's something in the ether, man, woman, or beast, or whoever's running the planet above. Loads of beautiful sort of things have happened. I've met some incredible, talented people. I've had some amazing sort of famous people come through here. And, if you're interested in design, I mean, it's a great place to come and see, because I've been collecting all my life. So there's a lot to see. But there's just a sort of beautiful karma here. There's a sort of spiritualness. The building's actually south-facing, so there's a lovely karma.
And a great way of using the building as well. We've heard that many churches go into ruin, so it's a great way of reclaiming it and using it as you do.
Absolutely. I think a lot of buildings, we tend to want to rescue a building when it's the roof's hanging off, there's leaks coming through and whatever else. I think a lot of buildings should be repaired and looked after earlier. I think if there was funding from the government or something like that, you would save more of these buildings, and they wouldn't get into a sort of state where the roof's hanging off, it's big leaks, the windows are falling out and all the rest of it. And they become an eyesore, don't they? I mean, we replaced 170 pieces of glass, the stained glass, which is now, they don't make it anymore, so you've got to have it specialist done. The two huge windows that are on the front of the chapel we had to take out, they had to be restored, £20,000 for two windows. So much like when you see an advert for, there's a chateau in France for sale for £1, you need 40 million to restore it. That's the sad case. So I think if there was more funding and people would look after the buildings a lot better, going forward with the future of the heritage of what our country's about, we've got an incredible sort of heritage in this country. I think it would make for better preservation.
Well, you've certainly done a great job, and it does look fantastic in here. No ghosts around that we've seen, just some amazing architecture and some amazing pieces and finds that are so unique here. It's definitely something to behold.
Thank you very much. And you were beholding our reporter Anna Riley there in Harriga. If you're listening to us on radio, could I just say good morning to all our listeners On the Channel Islands today,
Ooh,
where we have
lovely part of
launched
the world.
DAB+. We're talking about Jersey, Guernsey and Alderney. You now have access to GB News radio. What I would suggest you do is to go and knock your neighbour's door right now and say, are you listening to Eamonn and Isabel on GB Breakfast now? Let's say, but we can't listen on radio. And you can say,
Oh, yes,
they can.
you can.
Yes, you can. Actually, not only can you see them on your television, you can listen to them on the radio. So that's in the Channel Islands, Jersey, Guernsey and Alderney. And so there you are.
Yeah.
If you're having trouble with your DAB Plus radio, you may have to do a rescan to find GB News.
Yeah.
This is always where it goes wrong.
So many people, though, tweeting and messaging me, showing photographs of them with it on their DAB radio as the tuned station. So we really appreciate that. We love hearing from you. People in Australia, people in Spain, now the Channel Islands. We love it. We love having you with us. Thanks for joining us. It is 8:21. Let's move on now. Boris Johnson is facing some dire poll results. So coming up, we're going to be talking about whether or not he could be heading for the door. Find out after your forecast.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Good morning. A pretty cold one out there this morning, even colder tomorrow morning. Generally, though, today, most of us will see quite a bit of blue sky and the winds easing down compared to yesterday. Now, low pressure is pulling away to the east. There is this weather front that's weakening further west, and we're kind of between the two weather systems. So, as I said, for many it's dry and fine, but the winds are still coming down from the north and still pretty brisk across the northeast. Could be icy here through the morning as the showers keep on feeding down. Those showers chiefly of rain at low levels, but some snow over the hills, and a wintry mix in the showers too for Wales. But also here, the showers should fade through the day, and any across the southwest will be few and far between. For most of us, it's a fine, bright winter's day, and those winds continue to ease down. Temperatures, well, still on the chilly sides, but generally not feeling quite as cold as yesterday because of those lighter winds. However, light winds and clear skies this evening will allow a frost to form and form pretty quickly. Temperatures really going to drop overnight tonight. A widespread frost forming. Temperatures likely to get down to -1, -2, even in towns and cities. Rural spots -5, -6. So a really cold start to Thursday. Further west, though, cloud is moving in. That will lift the temperatures and bring some rain to Northern Ireland. Bit of snow is possible over the hills here, but as the wet weather hits the colder air across North Wales, Northern England and Scotland, there will be more snow here over some of the higher routes. Shouldn't last too long, but it might make for some pretty grim travelling conditions for a time during the course of Thursday. Further south, it'll be mostly rain as temperatures eventually get up close to double figures. But for most elsewhere, it'll still feel pretty cold on Thursday, even though temporarily we have this milder air moving in. That shunts out of the way, cold air returns, and things could be icy with some snow showers in the northwest on Friday morning. Bye for now.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Hello there, I'm Eamonn.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamonn Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamonn
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
Good morning, 8:25. This is Breakfast with Eamonn and Isabel on GB News.
We are live on your TV and radio this morning. Now we're going to be talking about the Prime Minister facing one of the worst Tory local election results in London in over 50 years. That's according to one of the party's top polling experts, heaping further pressure on the Prime Minister over his leadership. Well, for more on this, we're joined now by GB News national reporter Paul Hawkins. This is going to be awkward reading then for the PM.
Yes, it will be. Good morning, Isabel. Good morning, Eamonn. That forecast on the local election results in May, based on some analysis by top Conservative pollster Lord Hayward, who joins us now. Lord Hayward, really good to see you. This analysis, you've taken into account the current national polls and also the boundary ward changes within London, and it doesn't make for good reading for the Prime Minister.
No, the polls have moved against the Conservatives. They've moved against the Prime Minister over the last month, and taking those into consideration, the Conservatives would have real problems in Wandsworth and would face similar but slightly easier challenges in Westminster, Hillingdon and Barnet, where the Tories are slightly further ahead than in Wandsworth.
Yeah, and just give us an idea of how bad that would be for the Conservatives, given they control 7 of the London out of the 32 London boroughs. If they were to lose 4, how damaging would that be for the Prime Minister?
That it would be the worst results the Conservatives have had in London since the London boroughs have existed in this form, which is over 50 years. So psychologically, it would be bad for the Prime Minister and for the Tory party. But having said that, we are talking about the middle of a parliamentary period between one election and the other, and you would expect the Labour Party to be well ahead under these circumstances.
Yeah, and there's a long way to go until May, right? So you'd add a pinch of salt to that forecast?
Even in the last day or so, the opinion polls have moved slightly back towards the Conservatives. I did the analysis on the basis of what we were looking at throughout December, but polls move, and therefore what happens is it may well be very different from what it would have happened if we'd been voting this week.
Yeah, so how crucial are those elections in May then? If he were to lose these seats and potentially local authorities outside London, how bad would that be for the Prime Minister? Could we see a Conservative leadership election?
No, you don't know one event triggers a leadership change. What happens, whether you're leader of a government or leader of the opposition, is a loss of power, loss of influence, or the gaining of power and influence is attritional. It takes place over stages. And therefore, MPs, the public at large, number 10, will judge the May elections against the background of all the other political events in April and May.
Yeah. In your personal opinion, what does the Prime Minister have to do to pull things back?
He's got to show, as he has done over the last few days, that he is in control, he is managing the government, and that there aren't these sleaze and Partygate incidents which have made the public really angry, quite reasonably so. And the government has to avoid those sorts of problems and get back to governing and achieving progress in relation to the pandemic, but also in relation to the economy.
Yeah, because there's been some criticism. It's not even the problems themselves for the Prime Minister, it's the way he's handled them.
There's no question that, for example, Partygate, as it's been called, wasn't cutting through that much with the public until the film appeared. You can have an event and you have to handle it in a particular way. And politicians learn generally it's not the event that causes the problem, it's the way that you handle them that actually causes a reaction with the public at large.
Yeah, listen, Lord Hayward, really good to talk to you this morning. Thank you so much for joining us. Very cold here on the south banks of the Thames. But yeah, that's the advice from Lord Hayward, really. And he was alluding there to the Prime Minister's judgment there, which has improved in the last few days, translating into to those poll results showing that the lead between Labour and the Conservatives, or the lead that Labour has over the Conservatives, narrowing somewhat, but still some time to go for the Prime Minister to claw it back before May.
Yeah, it's not the event, but the way you handle it. Wise words from Lord Hayward there. Paul Hawkins, thanks very much indeed.
Oh, before you go, Paul, how cold is it where you are?
I cannot feel my hands. That is my fault. I'm going to own it. I've left my gloves at home, and it is freezing here.
Yeah, I know, I can tell by your nose. Don't worry, it's all good. That's a big... And your toes, can you feel your toes?
That as well. How much? What, nose warmers? What do I get?
Nose warmers need to be a thing. Let's not go down this road. But I tell you what you should get, and this is a really good investment for all reporters, and I speak from experience and from presenting on location, is a gilet with electronic heat pads in them.
Ooh.
It's a game changer. I'll get you one next Christmas. There you go.
Yeah, that sounds good. Yeah, I'm up for that. Yeah, that sounds lovely.
All right, Paul, thank you.
Thanks, Paul. Cheers. Thanks very much indeed. Coming next, Novak Djokovic has been given an exemption
from
vaccination rules so that he can play in the Australian Open. So what do you make of that? See, it doesn't actually say he's not vaccinated.
I see. They are sticking up for him.
Privacy type thing.
Oh, it's not about privacy. It's about his body.
Well,
it's a temple.
It's about the tournament, and is it going to draw viewers and punters to watch it, whatever. But Australia's been through a lot in the lockdown, and there's a perception that Djokovic is getting
special treatment.
Special treatment and all of this. Anyway, we're going to be talking to some Paul Coyte after the break. Hello there, I'm Eamonn.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamonn Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamonn
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News. Welcome back. It is 8:34. This is Breakfast with Eamonn, and with me, Isabel, here on GB News. We're live on your TV and radio this morning.
Well, let's now discuss some business stories that will affect the pound in your pocket. It is, as usual, Michael Wilson, business finance commentator there. Michael, all over the papers for the past 2 days is staffing. You and I talked about this earlier in the week. Big staffing shortages. What's the proposal to put that right?
There isn't really a proposal. All that the Prime Minister said yesterday was that he was going to target 100,000 workers in what they think are essential industries, which includes transport, therefore includes railways. The real bottom line about railways is this, that yes, there is a lot of modernisation the government wants to draw attention to amidst all this. The fact of it is that railway companies have always made money out of peak, crowded, commuter travel. They're not getting that at the moment because people are simply not going back to the office for all the reasons that we don't need to discuss right now, but they're not. So therefore, how do these train operators actually make any money out of what's going on? And number two, since the announcement that most of the railways in this country are now owned effectively by the taxpayer, and thus the taxpayer is paying for them, the government's view about all this, as attributed to what's described in the trade as a spokesperson yesterday, is that, you know, one would expect the government to try to make sure that the train operators are not too much of a drain on the public purse. So, but all that boils down to basically is fewer trains running because the railway operators are cutting back. Now, the railway operators are saying there's been a deathly silence from Whitehall about this since before Christmas. What are they supposed to do? Are they supposed to act unilaterally, which they're doing at the moment? So fewer trains, not necessarily that they're more crowded, but there just aren't the trains. So it's checking the timetable. That's the key.
Yeah, and look, you know, if there's one issue that really gets our viewers going, it is disruption to the railways. Another one, of course, is the cost of living that's expected to go through the roof this year. Last night, though, Boris Johnson ruling out dropping VAT on fuel because he says it would help the people who need it the least. But this is a pledge that he made as part of Brexit, isn't it?
He did. I mean, this is a problem, isn't it, with making pledges like this, hostage to fortune and all the rest of it. What he's saying is that a VAT cut overall of the 5%, which is currently levied, would actually affect everybody, and therefore, you know, richer people would get their fuel cheaper, as well as those in more vulnerable households. I don't see the argument about that. I mean, why not just target? If you're going to reduce VAT, why not have a target just like you do for normal kinds of benefits? The problem is this, that he's ruled that out, and you've got a chancellor this morning, or at least in the overnight papers, saying that, you know, don't look to him necessarily, don't look to the state for unlimited health. So what's happening today is that the business secretary is meeting the energy companies, 20 of whom have gone bust, by the way, since increase started. Wholesale costs up about 500% since the beginning of last year. Amidst all that, they're looking for some kind of wiggle room to help people. It could be that more vulnerable families are targeted. I suspect that's probably what will happen, because the fact of the matter is that if you're spending money on energy and you aren't that well off, you tend to spend more of your income on energy keeping warm. And actually, as Eamonn was quite rightly noting with our reporter down on the side of the Thames, things are getting colder, and they're going to get colder overnight as well. So this is becoming a full-blown crisis. You talked about costs going through the roof. Costs are also going through the windows as well. So insulate windows, put in less power-demanding bulbs like LED bulbs, and get a jumper. I mean, this sounds crazy. This sounds silly advice, but it will actually work.
Yeah, good old-fashioned jumper.
If you were in here today with us, you'd be having a jumper on, Michael. Thanks very much indeed. Thank you. Because you've just noted it's very cold.
It's a bit nippy
There's a draft blowing.
It's a bit nippy, but it keeps...
It's aircon.
I think it is aircon, which is probably good in this Omicron era that we're all living through.
Paul Coit beside me and I, we're going to discuss stories in the sports world. Novak Djokovic, Isabel.
Is he getting special treatment? Because, you know, Eamonn was saying earlier, Australia's had a shocker. They've been through the most strict lockdowns, I think, of any nation I can think of. Yeah. And yet here he is getting special treatment, isn't he?
Well, you know what? I've got the list of medical exemptions, and I thought I'd do this for you. But, you know, and I'm sure you can imagine I'm a subscriber to the Lancet. So I've got the inflammatory cardiac illness in the last 3 months. So it's because we don't know what the reason is. Acute medical condition, COVID-19 infection in the last 6 months, or world number one and current Australian Open champion, I think, are the exemptions. So I'm still trying to work out which one of those it is.
Whatever it is, it's his business. He doesn't have to make it public. It is. The authorities are happy, even though they would want him there at the tournament. And sure. Very definitely would want a big name like that.
Yeah, I mean, he's hugely important to be there. It's been about 9 months because he's kept very tight-lipped about it. He said he won't say whether he has been vaccinated, but, you know, obviously he hasn't, because if vaccination is required to actually take part in the actual tournament, he's not going to need a medical exemption. So that's where we are at the moment. There's other players that are feeling maybe a little uncomfortable about it and thinking, well, how comes he manages to get in, as Isabel, as you rightly said, is there special treatment? You can understand them expecting the world number one to be able to play in the tournament, but he's still not saying too much about it, apart from the fact he's now flown in.
We stay with health matters, football this time. Christian Eriksen, he's been talking about this heart attack that he had, and how is he recovering?
He's recovering really well. I mean, I know Christian Eriksen very well from time at Spurs, and it was just, as I'm sure when you saw it, it was just one of the most shocking scenes I think we've ever seen at a football match.
Terrifying.
And, he died for 5 minutes, and then he was wheeled away, of course, and then, thank goodness, his life was saved. He says he's as good as he's ever been. He's got a defibrillator which is fitted to his heart, so he can't play in Italy. Because of that, because there's a rule that says that no sportsman in Italy can actually have a defibrillator. Why? For crying out loud, I've absolutely no idea, because if it's going to save someone's life, but they won't allow it. So that's the reason he's left it to the lab.
Get Djokovic to sort that out for him.
He could have a quiet word,
yeah.
couldn't he? He could have a quiet word. This is how you get away with this. But it looks like he's now he wants to play in the World Cup. So it was the first interview he did with Danish TV. He wants to play in the World Cup in Qatar. He also says that he wants to play club football again. His agent is saying that England, he's home, and that's where he'd like to play. So it really is a matter of whether any club will take a chance on him. He says he's absolutely fine. It'd be great to see him play. Yeah. But, of course, most of us would be extremely nervous about how he's going to be. But he says he's all right, as do doctors.
Insured? That's what it'll depend on.
Well, I guess so.
He wants to insure him as well.
Yeah, I guess so.
Now, Romelu Lukaku at Chelsea and his manager, they've had a quiet word. You were talking about quiet words there.
Yes, yeah.
Have they kissed and made up?
I think they have. I mean, we discussed it the other day, didn't we? I think it was all a bit of a storm in a teacup. I think he was talking to the fans of Inter Milan and so much he loved them. Maybe he'd said too much. I mean, we all get a bit, obviously neither of you two would, but get a little carried away when you're discussing things, and be honest about it. But it really has riled Chelsea fans. They're not very happy. So the only way that he can probably put things right is if he scores a hat-trick against Spurs later tonight.
Forgets. That's all we want.
Well, I won't, but hopefully everybody else will. So fingers crossed. I'm sure it's going to be absolutely fine.
Okay.
So they have kissed and made up.
Look, another health matter. Liverpool Carabao Cup.
Yeah.
They're worried this is to do with COVID.
Yeah, this is a strange one as well, because there's been so many matches that have been called off. They want their game against Arsenal tomorrow night to be called off because they say that there's more COVID cases. But there's an interesting precedent, which I was thinking about if we go back a couple of years, when they were playing in the World Club Trophy and they decided that they couldn't actually field a side. So they said, we want to play our under-18s against Aston Villa. So there was a lot of hoo-ha about that and saying, well, you shouldn't be able to do that. And they said, well, that's what we want to do. So it's interesting now that they're not prepared to play their 18s, their under-18s against Arsenal when they wanted to do it when it suited them. So we'll see what happens tomorrow night.
But then, of course, silverware, I mean, it looks like, the Premier League is out of their grasp.
Yeah.
I mean, it might be a bit premature, but I can't see anybody overhauling City. So maybe, every trophy counts.
I think every trophy does count.
I
wonder, what would he have said, though, Jurgen Klopp, if it was maybe the third round?
Yeah.
It'd been the situation. Would they be that worried about players missing? They probably would have put the kids in there anyway. But it is important to, I'm sure.
But I agree with you as a supporter, and people talk about, the FA Cup's not important or the Carabao Cup's not important. But they are important to you as a supporter.
Supporters are incredibly important. We look at it as journalists and we look at it as so-called sports experts that talk about Champions League qualifications, etc. But first and foremost, I'm a fan. And I want clubs to win a cup. That's the most important thing. You want your day out at Wembley. You want to see them paraded, whatever the cup may be. So if it's the League Cup, if it's the Carabao Cup, whatever it is.
Well, whatever the trophy is, the Ashes lost for England, but the series continues.
The series does continue. There's still hope. I was talking to Steve Harmison, the former bowler, just yesterday, and I was saying, look, just give me some hope. Is there a chance? Just is there anything? And he still believes, yes, we can win a test for what it's worth. But I am at the point where I've gone from thinking I'm very angry, I'm upset about the way they're playing, and I'm now thinking if I was an England player right now, I'd be on a hiding to nothing. Yeah. And I just want to get this stuff done with. But at least they've got a West Indies test to look forward to. So maybe that's something to look forward to February to head to Barbados and Jamaica.
If you're listening to us on radio and you're thinking, who's that Australian talking to Eamonn?
Come on.
Well, Eamonn thought he was Australian, but you're from where?
I'm from Essex. It's that Romford accent that's coming out.
It sounds very Australian.
You think so, mate? I'm really not sure what you're talking about there, Eamonn.
Paul,
I shouldn't say that in a building like this, should I? OK, I'll keep it English.
Good to see you, my friend.
Thank you, good to see you.
Thank you very much indeed. Paul Coit there with the sport.
Love it. Have you got me to do an Australian accent? It's one of my favourites.
That's very good.
Yeah, throw a few
Very
shrimps
good.
on the barbie. In fact, I've got an Australian boss, so probably shouldn't start sending up the Australian accent. We're talking drones now. Start droning on about drones. A company called Drone Defence wants to launch safety drones to help women feel safer at night. If you're a woman watching this, let me know if it would make you feel safe. I'm not sure about it myself.
Well, watch, see what they actually do.
Yeah, and if you're listening, we'll try and describe it a bit for you. They're going to be able to be summoned by somebody within minutes if they are a little bit worried. So we can see
you would
here.
have an app or an alarm or something, and the idea is that you'd be walking along feeling vulnerable. The drone takes off when you hit your panic button, and it goes overhead, and then it emits like a beam of light.
Beam of light, yeah.
Like in the film Close Encounters,
Yeah, apparently some police forces are sniffing around them, thinking about using them. Unless it actually stops, perhaps if you've got a sort of intense psychopath determined to kill you, I'm not sure a drone's really going to work, and I don't think it's going to make me feel safe walking home. Would Sarah Everard have been safe with a drone?
It makes any predator aware that you're in contact with somebody else and that they are being recorded. And it must make you feel safer, sure.
Yeah, but that's assuming a predator is a rational human being, and I just don't think they are. I've done enough murder trials in my time, and you know what? Most murderers aren't rational human beings.
Well, let's put that point to Richard Gill now. Richard is the founder of Drone Defence, and he joins us now. So Isabel still has her doubts, Richard.
Yeah, good morning, and thank you for having me. And I think the points that Isabel brought out are really quite interesting. And potentially in the past, when you've covered murder trials, that is the extreme of street crime and violence against women and girls. What we've seen and the advice we've been given is that most street crime is done like by an opportunist. So if we can sort of change the balance between the risk of what the assailant is going to get over the victim, by putting a camera into that situation, much like with CCTV or people being watched when they commit crime, then we think we can change that balance. And as a drone company, we look at how drones can be used to help solve some of the challenges we face in society. And we feel that now is the right time to be able to deploy this technology to cover the gaps that are in the CCTV network and help support people. And the thing that got me really looking at this in detail is that a YouGov poll before Christmas stated that 1 in 5 women do not go out at night because they feel unsafe. And I was looking at how we might be able to use our expertise here in the UK and in the East Midlands to be able to adjust that balance. So by no means are we saying that this is the answer to all the issues. This is a part of a range of measures that the government are looking at themselves. And this is how we thought we could contribute to the situation.
How much do people have to contribute to you, Richard, to buy into this service? How much would this cost?
So what we did is we benchmarked this against sort of the police helicopter, and the police helicopter currently costs about £3,200 an hour to deploy, and we think we can do this for about £100 an hour. Put a drone over a situation to try and capture that footage. So who pays for that? We haven't sort of figured that out yet. So we're currently in the exploratory phase at the moment. The government have set out a number of different funds available to solve these sort of crimes, and we're in the process of applying for some funding. We're looking for about £500,000 to enable us to develop this model, to prove that it's safe to the authorities, and then deploy it in the UK.
So your subscribers would be authorities, there'd be police forces, for instance, but not necessarily individuals?
Well, I think it could be a number of different things. So you could have the app, as you see in the video, and somebody presses a button and that calls the drone directly to them. So it almost cuts out the police. But the police can use this, of course. Local authorities could use it. Fire service could use it. The drone looking at a fire incident. So the commanders, before they turn up to the incident, they can see what the situation is and get that information in early. Security services could use it. So there's break into a house, into a factory, something like that. A drone could be there gathering that information if CCTV footage isn't there.
Vision there, Richard, really Drone Defence. Richard Gill's the boss man there. Thanks for letting us into that and showing us that. I really appreciate it, Richard. Thank you. Here in the studio now, we've got, to first of all, let's talk about this. We've got John Smith, sports agent, and we've got Martin Dobney, journalist and former Brexit Party MEP. Martin, what do you think in terms of security, a drone being operated by the local police force?
Well, I think it's well-meaning, sounds a bit pricey, and also how fast would the response time be? And presumably you call these things up, but how soon would the drone be there? And how soon would the incident likely to happen?
It wouldn't be pricey for a police force. He's saying it's 3,000 quid to launch a helicopter.
Yeah.
But he's saying 100 quid to launch a drone.
Yeah, but how soon could it get to an incident? I think it's, I don't know, it just seems like pie in the sky.
Right, pie in the sky. Well, it is. It'll be something in the sky.
The man with the word.
An interesting innovation, anyway. Let's go, John, let's look at your first story, which is cannabis legalisation in the Mail.
Good subject. First thing in the morning, talk about drugs, isn't it, I guess?
Well, you know, once I read it, I had my chronic pain with my legs, and when I tweeted out there, the amount of people who are affected by chronic pain is absolutely scary.
Yep.
And a lot of them are turning more towards cannabis. Does it work? Does it not?
Yes, it does. Not for everybody. The story I particularly wanted to pick up on is Sadiq Khan yesterday. It was yesterday's story, but the reaction is really this morning.
Yeah.
Should we legalise cannabis in all its basic forms?
Mm-hmm.
It's worked to a degree in California. It's worked well in Holland, but it's certainly not a rose without thorns. But I think anything that helps take the gangs out of drugs on the streets, I think, is a step in the right direction. I think cannabis has some very health-giving properties,
yes.
And certainly for sports people that I kick around with, it has helped injuries.
This is very interesting, John, because you mentioned cannabis. It's automatically associated with something illegal, something that you shouldn't be doing. But yet what we're talking about here is a different form, a different use, a different way of looking at cannabis.
Yeah. It's not the cannabis you grow in your back garden. It's a derivative.
I don't grow, just for the record, I don't grow cannabis in my back garden.
Never crossed my mind. But, you know, it's not a bad substance if it's harvested correctly. And I think the discussion now, it's quite emotive, but I think the discussion should be open now. And I think people should talk about what we do with cannabis. And is it a first step down the road of starting to release this in all its forms into society in a managed manner?
What do you think, Martin?
Well, there's an interesting political element to this, and that is Sadiq Khan has gone against Labour leader Keir Starmer, who doesn't want to do this, because this is a very London, much more liberal and accepting with things like this, whereas it doesn't play so well in the provinces. So there's a political aspect. I think Sadiq Khan wants to be a future Labour leader. Yeah. And this is the way of him kind of putting forward more progressive movements. There are arguments for and against. There's been a big backlash against it because not only is it including cannabis, but it also includes amphetamine and ketamine, which are hardly, health-giving or helping with pain. They are outright stimulants and much more dangerous. But I do think a progressive step towards a more Portuguese system, away from decriminalisation and more towards medicalisation, is a positive thing.
Interesting. Let us know your views on that. Get in touch. And so we have a story here. You want to talk about the fuel crisis, and we thought, look, if you take the VAT or the green taxes off our utility bills, that may be a help. But Boris Johnson's ruled that out.
That's right. So your interesting previous contributor covered off the facts. I'll get to the politics of this. I think that the net zero nightmare is the next political division line after Brexit and the pandemic. The cost of this is eye-watering. It's about £1,700 per year for every taxpayer until 2050 to pay for this green revolution. Meanwhile, we are dependent on Russia for gas. We are not energy self-sufficient. When the wind stops, the wind farms grind to a halt. We need a more progressive fuel solution. We need to stop fracking. We need to go nuclear. And why not look at bringing back some coal-powered fire stations? And my dad was a miner. There's great coal in Britain. We import millions of tons of coal still. We need to be more progressive. But nobody's got a handle on this. And often people say...
Because to say what you have just said is like sort of throwing holy water on a vampire. Really,
it is.
Isn't it?
Precisely. And that's the point. We have no rounded political solutions to this. Everyone is led by the nose, by the cranks and the crackpots. Greta Thunberg, Insulate Britain, Extinction Rebellion. Who's in control? The fact is people are going bankrupt.
I personally, I look at this and I think, if you want to solve all this country's problems and if you want to be like Dubai... frack. It's as simple as that. Now, but, that's not the way the thinking is at the moment, is it?
And the problem, you're right, but the problem with that is if we rely on expensive and unreliable renewables, we're in this quandary of having to pay a lot more money. And people often say, I chose the Daily Mirror here, because they say, well, name one benefit of Brexit, which they campaigned against. Well, suddenly they like the idea of 0% VAT on fuel, which is a clear benefit of Brexit, because we wouldn't be allowed to do this if we're still a member of the European Union. But we need to go further. The just about managings who are choosing between eating and heating will only increase as this goes down the road. We've got to tackle this conversation with free speech around energy and what we do, because if we're going down the route of renewables, we're going to have to pay through the nose.
It's a difficult one to swallow, but you could solve the fuel crisis. You could solve funding of the NHS. You could solve social care funding if you allowed fracking. But what would the cost be? That's the question.
The benefits are clear.
He says there's benefits to it. What do you think? Just let us know. Now, a man advertised on a number of billboards around Birmingham, and he wants a wife.
OK, I want to do that in 1 second. I just want to put a footnote to your previous discussion. The government in the past have backtracked on a couple of major issues where they've put up a barrier. One was food for children in schools. One was when Boris and the Chancellor were diagnosed with COVID and then said they weren't going to isolate because, and then they did. I think what you've just discussed is another major issue for the government. We have a national insurance hike coming up.
Yep.
We have green taxes sitting all across the energy sector. We have VAT on fuel, etc. And we have a financial crisis that's going to happen. I don't want to frighten anybody. We all know this. It's nothing new. The government, at some point, are going to have to step in. They might as well do it now rather than have to backtrack. Take a deep breath. Do you want me to talk about something else?
No, I have to say goodbye to you. I have to say I've got a very angry producer shouting in my ear here.
Okay.
John, thank you very much indeed. Martin, always a pleasure. Thank you very much indeed. Now it's over to Isabel.
Coming up on Breakfast with Eamonn and Isabel, Harry Potter author J.K. Rowling's found herself in even deeper trouble with some of those on the left. What's she done now? Find out after this. First, here's your forecast.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Good morning. A pretty cold one out there this morning, even colder tomorrow morning. Generally, though, today, most of us will see quite a bit of blue sky and the winds easing down compared to yesterday. Now, low pressure is pulling away to the east. There is this weather front that's weakening further west, and we're kind of between the two weather systems. So, as I said, for many it's dry and fine, but the winds are still coming down from the north and still pretty brisk across the northeast. Could be icy here through the morning as the showers keep on feeding down. Those showers chiefly of rain at low levels, but some snow over the hills, and a wintry mix in the showers too for Wales. But also here, the showers should fade through the day, and any across the southwest will be few and far between. For most of us, it's a fine, bright winter's day, and those winds continue to ease down. Temperatures, well, still on the chilly sides, but generally not feeling quite as cold as yesterday because of those lighter winds. However, light winds and clear skies this evening will allow a frost to form and form pretty quickly. Temperatures really going to drop overnight tonight. A widespread frost forming. Temperatures likely to get down to -1, -2, even in towns and cities. Rural spots -5, -6. So a really cold start to Thursday. Further west, though, cloud is moving in. That will lift the temperatures and bring some rain to Northern Ireland. Bit of snow is possible over the hills here, but as the wet weather hits the colder air across North Wales, Northern England and Scotland, there will be more snow here over some of the higher routes. Shouldn't last too long, but it might make for some pretty grim travelling conditions for a time during the course of Thursday. Further south, it'll be mostly rain as temperatures eventually get up close to double figures. But for most elsewhere, it'll still feel pretty cold on Thursday, even though temporarily we have this milder air moving in. That shunts out of the way, cold air returns, and things could be icy with some snow showers in the northwest on Friday morning. Bye for now.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Hello there, I'm Eamonn.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamonn Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamonn
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News. A very good morning to you. The time is 1 minute past 9. It is Wednesday, the 5th of January. You're watching Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn and me, Isabel.
You're watching us on TV, you're listening to us on radio, and I'd like to say throw out a special request out of the Channel Islands. So if you're on Jersey, Guernsey, Alderney, you could be listening to us on DAB+. We'd love to hear from you as to what's going on in your life. We'd like to reflect it here, news at GB Views. And you can tweet us at GB News or something like that. It's at GB News. That's exactly what it is. So love to hear from you. Go out and tell your listeners we are available, or your neighbours, I meant to say. We are available on DAB+. To which Ruth would now say to me, "What is that?"
Oh, well, you're going to have to give her a lesson.
Just go.
It just means that as Ruth, or indeed anybody, watches us on the TV, but she has to head off to work,
yeah,
she can stick us on the radio and take it
be in the car.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can't escape
I reckon it wouldn't take you very long to get to where you're going to if you lived on the Channel Islands.
That's true. That is a very good point.
Okay. So get involved in the conversation this morning, as we say, gbviews at gbnews.uk, or you can tweet at GB News. Why have you gone silent for?
Well, I was expecting the sting to play, if I'm perfectly honest. But we are moving on to talk about Prince Andrew, our top story this hour. And of course, he is awaiting the verdict of a hearing in New York. The judge has said that any moment now he'll come back with a judgment on whether or not the civil case that is due to go on in the autumn is thrown out. We can speak to a lovely guest, Richard Fitzwilliam, about that now. Hopefully he can join us. Richard, are you there?
Well, let's see him. Let's see him. Hello, Richard Fitzwilliams. Very good, Richard. Sorry, we had a little technical hiccup there. You know, today this judge is taking his time. What way is it looking? How would you perceive this?
Well, according to reports, this is going to be a very, very disappointing decision for Andrew, because what happened, it just shows in legal cases, you can never tell the way it's going to go. The point at issue, the 2009 agreement, which was in fact an agreement that had been confidential, it had been kept secret between Virginia Roberts, as she was then, and Epstein, was supposed to be extended to all potential defendants. Royalty was mentioned in this context, and Andrew's lawyer, Andrew Brettler, has argued that he therefore is by it and that the case should be dismissed. But Judge Lewis Kaplan took a very different angle, and this was extraordinary. The point being that since it was a secret agreement, the judge appeared to suggest he hasn't finally ruled, but in the debates yesterday in court, that it was, since it was an agreement that was secret, it couldn't be covered. Andrew wouldn't be covered by it. He wouldn't be entitled to be covered, because the only people who could say who would be either Epstein, who's dead, or Virginia Roberts Giuffre, who of course is behind the civil case against him. And the extraordinary thing here is the judge said that if it had been necessary to include someone else, it would have been easy to include this in the document. And the entire thrust of what happened yesterday, I mean, Andrew Brettler's attempts to get a more specific look at the charges against Andrew, that was thrown out. We understand that the domicile business, the thought that she's resident in Australia, not Colorado, as a result, that wouldn't proceed. It would seem pretty grim so far as the Queen's second son is concerned.
Look, here's the thing, Richard. Whatever happens, whatever decree there is from the judge, whatever happens in the courtroom, he will be guilty of a friendship with Epstein, and that surely will be like a ball and chain to Prince Andrew forever after.
Oh, it'll be absolutely ghastly. In fact, there is so much that's simply dreadful. Firstly, there is an interview with Emily Maitlis, so surreal that it's impossible almost to summarize it, other than to say car crash is a generous interpretation. Then there's the fact that he didn't or hasn't apparently cooperated with the FBI, who are seeking Epstein's accomplices, and he promised to do that. Then there's the photograph taken in 2001 with Virginia Roberts and Maxwell, which has never been satisfactorily explained. And also, of course, remaining are the links that he was originally linked to 230 charities, some 50 apparently have distanced themselves from him. What happens to the remainder? What happens to his military links?
Yeah, well, it doesn't sound good, Richard. We've got to leave it there. Thank you very much. You were listening to Richard Fitzwilliams, who is a royal commentator there. Really appreciate that, Richard. Thank you.
It's not a good situation, is it, for the Duke of York? Look, let's get some headlines now. Airline bosses are calling for testing requirements for international travel to be ditched. Research commissioned by an airlines group suggests they make little difference in reducing the spread of Omicron. According to The Times, ministers are considering scrapping the need for pre-departure testing for those arriving in the UK. First Minister Nicola Sturgeon's addressing the Scottish Parliament later on possible changes to restrictions there. Opposition parties want the 10-day isolation period to be cut to 7 if someone tests negative twice. The French President Emmanuel Macron has said he wants to get on the nerves of unvaccinated people by restricting their freedoms. His comments have sparked a backlash from his opponents, who say the words aren't presidential. France has one of the highest vaccination rates in Europe at more than 90%, but saw more than 270,000 new COVID cases yesterday. The MP, Stephen Timms, says he'd welcome the chance to meet the woman who stabbed him. The East Ham MP was attacked in 2010. She's serving a life sentence for attempted murder and has written to him apologising. He told GBNews a face-to-face meet-up before she's released from jail would help with the restorative justice process. And a memorial for the victims of the Manchester Arena bombing attack opens today. Called the Glade of Light, it's a white marble halo that bears the names of the 22 people who were killed at an Ariana Grande concert in May 2017. Families who lost loved ones have been able to put memory capsules inside the halo.
Let's turn our attention now to the world of entertainment, and joining me now from The Sun on Sunday, assistant showbiz editor Hannah Hope to talk about those. Hannah, good morning to you.
Good morning.
And controversy, it always seems to follow J.K. Rowling about.
There's fresh controversy for Harry Potter creator J.K. Rowling, indeed. Fresh from her trans views, which have caused so many upset across all the Harry Potter world and fans. She's now come under fire from a US comedian, Jon Stewart, for anti-Semitic depiction in her novels.
In what way? Describe this to us, in what way?
So the goblins who run Gringotts Bank have been compared to the caricatures of Jewish people in 1903 anti-Semitic Bible, as it were, the Protocols, Elders of Zion. And this is how Jewish people were traditionally depicted to be, with long noses, money hungry.
But she doesn't say these goblins are...
She doesn't, but the way she describes them and the fact that they are running the banks, several Jewish people have taken offence to this. This isn't the first time this criticism has been made. Pete Davison, who runs Saturday Night Live, also pointed this out back in November. And it's picked up quite a lot of speed, actually. People have sort of said, a lot of people have been talking about this behind the scenes in Hollywood, and no one said it. Obviously, J.K. Rowling hasn't come back herself, so we can't say what she was thinking. She could have just been talking. She could have just been describing people who, who stereotypically are kind of money hungry. So yeah, it's fresh controversy for her though, after what's been quite an unsettled year.
Should we talk about the Duchess of Cornwall? She is so glam, I think, for 75. It's her birthday, is it today or this week? And she's editing Country Life.
So the Duchess of Cornwall, Camilla Parker Bowles, her birthday is in July. She's going to turn 75. No, it's Kate's birthday on Sunday. She turns 40, lots of royal celebrations. So she's going to be editing Country Life in July. She's going to put her favourite recipe in, her favourite rural view, and she's going to talk about some of her favourite animals in the countryside. It's celebrating dogs and horses, and also her son, Tom Parker Bowles, has a column, and he's already complained he doesn't want his mum to be editing his copy.
She's good crack, though, isn't she?
Yeah,
as you would say.
She is. I mean, obviously, I've had a chance to mix with her a number of times over the years, and very delightful lady. Very, very delightful lady, has to be said. We are going to come back to you shortly, Hannah. I have no reason to know why, but we're talking to somebody in Birmingham who's on billboards, are we?
Yeah, he's trying to find love. He's posted a picture of himself on a billboard. Who would be on a billboard, I ask, Eamonn? Not us.
Not us.
We'll talk about that shortly. First of all, let's take a quick break, and here's your forecast.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Good morning. A pretty cold one out there this morning, even colder tomorrow morning. Generally, though, today, most of us will see quite a bit of blue sky and the winds easing down compared to yesterday. Now, low pressure is pulling away to the east. There is this weather front that's weakening further west, and we're kind of between the two weather systems. So, as I said, for many it's dry and fine, but the winds are still coming down from the north and still pretty brisk across the northeast. Could be icy here through the morning as the showers keep on feeding down. Those showers chiefly of rain at low levels, but some snow over the hills, and a wintry mix in the showers too for Wales. But also here, the showers should fade through the day, and any across the southwest will be few and far between. For most of us, it's a fine, bright winter's day, and those winds continue to ease down. Temperatures, well, still on the chilly sides, but generally not feeling quite as cold as yesterday because of those lighter winds. However, light winds and clear skies this evening will allow a frost to form, and form pretty quickly. Temperatures really going to drop overnight tonight. A widespread frost forming. Temperatures likely to get down to -1, -2, even in towns and cities. Rural spots -5, -6. So a really cold start to Thursday. Further west, though, cloud is moving in. That will lift the temperatures and bring some rain to Northern Ireland. bit of snow is possible over the hills here. But as the wet weather hits the colder air across North Wales, Northern England and Scotland, there will be more snow here over some of the higher routes. Shouldn't last too long, but it might make for some pretty grim travelling conditions for a time during the course of Thursday. Further south, it'll be mostly rain as temperatures eventually get up close to double figures. But for most elsewhere, it'll still feel pretty cold on Thursday, even though temporarily we have this milder air moving in. That shunts out of the way, cold air returns, and things could be icy with some snow showers in the northwest on Friday morning. Bye for now.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Well, the reason we broke off from Hannah Hope with Showbiz there, and we will be returning to Hannah at the end of the programme, is that Gillian Keegan, the Minister of State for Care and Mental Health, is available at Westminster to talk to us. Minister, good morning to you. You can hear us okay?
Good morning.
Yeah, good.
Very warm welcome to the programme. Thanks for joining us. Look, we wanted to talk to you because, of course, press conference yesterday evening, the Prime Minister saying no further restrictions, and yet he said we can expect the health service to be overwhelmed and 1.2 million people sitting at home isolating for various reasons. Is this the right decision?
Well, yes. I mean, obviously, we acted very, very quickly once we first learnt of Omicron. We closed the borders, and then obviously we introduced Plan B, which includes people working from home, obviously lateral flow tests before you go to large venues, etc., and wearing masks in many more places. So we've introduced those measures, but the most important measure that we've introduced is really bringing forward our booster programme, because the most important thing now we can do is we bought enough time for people to get those boosters, and we did meet the target for the end of December, but we still have more people to get to through the booster programme. So 2 million slots this week. If you haven't had your slot yet, come forward, please. This is the week to get vaccinated, because it makes a massive difference to our hospitals, to the hospitalisation, and also to how severe the illness is.
What sort of difference will it make to the curve, to the wave, Minister? Where are we on that curve at this moment as you speak?
Well, obviously what we know is it does protect you against infection by about 70% and against hospitalisation by about 88%. And one of the things the Prime Minister told us yesterday is that if you look at the serious illness, severe illness in ICU, 61% of those people have not had any vaccines and 90% have not had their booster. The booster is a really important step to building back up that wall of defence. So it does make a big difference. So the more people can come forward, and it takes a week or two before you feel the benefits of it. So please, today is the day you should come forward if you haven't had your booster.
Before Christmas, you refused to rule out a circuit breaker. Does this mean you're now definitely ruling it out?
Well, what we've been doing all over Christmas, every day, 3 times a day, we've been meeting, we've been looking at all of the various aspects of the data, and, you know, we act on that, really. So getting the booster is the most important thing. Obviously, the working from home is a big part of minimising, particularly now people are back at school as well, as minimising the amount of people out and about. But the most important thing is the booster. And when we look at the impact of any future or further measures, the most impactful is getting people boosted, and the ones that we have in place today, Plan B.
You don't have to look far in the papers today to see the impact that Omicron is having on the health service. There are people being told if you're having a heart attack, get a taxi or get someone else to drive you in, because there simply aren't the drivers. Many hospitals having to cancel routine operations, and yet the Prime Minister is saying carry on as is. Is that not just simply because he's lost the political capital? He doesn't have the support of his own party, and quite frankly, there are big question marks about whether or not he can continue to lead the Conservatives.
No, not at all. We've been looking at the contingency plans and building up the contingency plans all over the Christmas with our colleagues in the NHS and the people working in the NHS trusts. So the critical state that some of the trusts have declared, that is the first stage actually in our contingency planning. And it's a local decision that trusts can make to call on to say they need some additional support, whether that's mutual aid from their NHS colleagues around, or
in hospitals. That can't be part of a routine plan. That's not going to be good news for anyone.
It's part of a contingency planning arrangement that we have in place for winter planning. We always have these plans in place. We always have the plans to also consider curtailing or slowing down electives. These are part of the usual winter plans that we have in place. Obviously, we've got much more pressure this year with Omicron. But yes, we do always have winter plans that have these step-down arrangements. And what we've asked is for the plans to be based on 10, 20 and 25% absentee levels so that we can work out what we would do in each of those scenarios. So yes, these are the sort of plans that actually the local resilience forums have had in place all the way through the pandemic.
Minister, we're hearing about the critical state with the National Health Service. I'm a wee bit worried, though, and this is one of your responsibilities, the care system in general. I'm sort of fearing that what we hear with the NHS has to be replicated in the social care system. In other words, it's going to be hit hard with staff shortages.
Yes, and actually not just the health and care sector, but many other sectors as well, which is why the Prime Minister announced yesterday for some other critical workers to have the daily lateral flow tests capability. But of course, and our health and social care staff are working incredibly hard, doing an amazing job, as they have done for the past 2 years, but they are under intense pressure right now. There is absolutely no doubt about that. And we're hoping that it's not going to be for a long time, obviously, but it is a lot of pressure as we have, absentee rates of 10% more or less. It does differ across the country, but that would be the average. And of course, that does make a difference, which is why, of course, we also looked at whether we could reduce the isolation period. We reduce that from 10 days to 7. If you have a negative test on day 6 and day 7, then you can leave isolation sooner. And obviously, some of those staff members will be coming back all the time, every day, as well as they are released from isolation.
And just tell us, can you confirm these changes that are being reported in some of the papers about the start date of your isolation? So if you can scrap the PCR test, you can start your isolation from a positive lateral flow, which could mean people get back to work sooner.
Yes, you can start today your isolation from when you first have symptoms, or when you first receive a positive lateral flow test or a confirmatory PCR test as well. So that's the system today. If you have symptoms, you start your isolation from them. But the most important thing is you need 2 negative lateral flow tests on day 6 and day 7.
Gillian Keegan, Minister in the Department of Health and Social Care, good to talk to you this morning. Thanks for taking the time.
Thank you.
Okay.
There you go.
That was Gillian Keegan, the Minister of State for Care and Mental Health. We're going to rejoin the showbiz situation with Hannah Hope, who works at The Sun on Sunday. What else have you got for us, Hannah?
So the Nirvana baby, the baby who iconically starred on the album front cover, 1991, Nevermind, has tried to sue the band for child pornography. It's been thrown out of the courts, and this comes after, he's Spencer Eldon, he's now 30. It comes after he has monetised the fact his whole life that he's been on the front cover. He has Nevermind tattooed on his chest. He's used the fact that he's been on this album cover to go on talk shows. He's recreated it several times since being an adult. So quite rightly, I think it's been thrown out of court. It potentially could have been for money values that he tried to go for it. And obviously it would incriminate anyone who actually owned the album cover, obviously, which is...
So he's on the make.
Yes, essentially.
Also, I don't see the connection between that and child pornography.
No.
Well, I think in the full wide album cover you might be able to see his bits. I'm not entirely sure.
Right.
But speaking of monetising things, a lady in the States has come up with a novel way to become extremely wealthy.
So yes, this is a new thing. There's been OnlyFans, there's been pictures of feet, but now Steph Chatto, who starred on 90 Day Fiancé, has been selling farts in jars to fans online. And she actually was hospitalised because she thought she was having a heart attack. And doctors found that she just had excess gas from all of the beans and protein.
So she's selling it off?
Yes.
Well, we do have to say this country could do with some of that extra supply there at the moment, as gas supply is so short and so expensive. Really? Is that what she wants to be known for?
Apparently so. I mean, to be honest, it has been quite lucrative for her. She's been doing it for 2 months and she's made $200,000, $150,000 grand.
So what would it cost you to buy one of her jars?
They're not cheap, Eamonn. $1,000. That she had a Christmas discount, 50% off, and she sells around 1 or 2 a week. So yeah, she's been doing pretty well.
Was she sort of breaking wind with unicorn sparkles or something? I mean, what on earth? I've heard it all now. I've heard it all.
Indeed.
We were talking just before we broke away to talk to the government minister there about the royal birthday of Camilla, the Duchess of Cornwall. But actually, the birthday that you touched on and we didn't get to go into was that, of course, of Kate. She's turning 40 on Sunday. She had to pare back her birthday celebrations a little bit.
Indeed.
Do you know what? I have never seen a bad photograph of her.
I know, she's gorgeous.
She's really kind of been very respectful over the years. She's come into her own, but she's also done her own thing with being a mother to their 3 children. On Christmas Eve, we saw her play the piano in the cathedral, which was really lovely, and I think she's got huge support this year. And yeah, I think she's a real role model for many women, especially in their 30s and their 40s, to show that you've still got it.
Oh, I absolutely adore her. When she sat at the piano, did you see that?
Yeah.
So amazing.
Yeah.
And of course, it's a big year for the Queen this year, who celebrates 70 years, the longest reigning monarch in history. So there's going to be lots of celebrations in the summer. Details are slowly being released. It happens in June, and it's probably going to be a 4-day celebration.
Oh, I can't wait.
When I sit here in the morning, sometimes I have to look twice because I think I'm presenting with Kate Middleton.
In my dream,
yes,
she's about 4 stone thinner.
Age. Exactly.
There we go.
Yeah.
No, she's about 4 stone thinner, but I really do like her. I think she just has the perfect everything. She's just great. Team Kate
together, yeah, very good. You'll be interested to watch The Apprentice tonight, which they're saying in the front of the Sun today has it become more like Love Island. Apparently, it's going to be a bit glamorous.
So yeah, it actually starts tomorrow, 9 p.m. on BBC One. And you're right, there's 16 new hopefuls, and Love Island versus The Apprentice. Watch this space.
Hannah, thank you very much indeed. That's Hannah Hope from the Sun on Sunday with your entertainment news, and that is it from us on this Wednesday morning breakfast with Eamonn and Isabel.
Yeah, coming up next, it's The Briefing with Tom Harwood. But from Eamonn and from me, it's goodbye. Have a lovely day. Bye.
Hello there, I'm Eamonn.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamonn Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for